A young man accidentally entered the world of his own novel and became just a background extra. You'd think he would immediately unlock some overpowered cheat ability and rise straight to the top of life. Yeah, right. After 2 whole weeks, he still didn't even know who he was. Luckily, he had always been an author who constantly delayed updates as long as he could reach the unfinished plotline. He should be able to return home, right? But when he thought about attending 8 AM classes every day and then getting exploited by a 996 he felt like getting shot would be less painful. But returning home was easier said than done. He didn't even know how he got here in the first place. The first thing he saw was a chaotic love triangle showdown. The righteous and selfless genius, VF, and the forever second-place rich young master, Shaolin. If this were a drama, it would be exciting to watch. But the problem was, he was now just a cannon fodder, extra full of confusion. Literally, with question marks all over his face. 新生东? But as the mighty author himself, how could he not know such a character existed in his book? Still, this was kind of interesting. This guy looked completely ordinary. Yet, he was actually a student at a magic academy. At the very least. He had gotten himself an elite experience trial card and had once again entered the center of the story's vortex. Almost every major event afterward happened here, so in a way, it wasn't a total loss. He had managed to connect himself a little to the main cast. From cannon fodder, extra, he was upgraded into a supporting side character. His first day at school was fairly normal, but the package he received after getting home scared the hell out of him. Wasn't that his computer? How could his original computer exist in this novel world? And who had sent it to him? Before you could think further, the computer emitted a green light. Then suddenly began some kind of data synchronization. Looking at the familiar rows of stats and abilities, he finally realized something. Wasn't this the setting system he had personally written? But why had he entered it himself? As the final 1% progress bar finished, the computer gave a cheerful ding. The question mark faced nobody, instantly transformed into a handsome, sunshine-type young man. He suddenly opened his eyes, just as expected. He had been reset. If you were transported into a magic world, what weapon would you choose? This young man didn't hesitate at all. Among all the bows and axes, he picked a gun. Rather than training hard every day and struggling against enemies up close, one bullet could settle everything. Most importantly, he had just arrived here. Other than using guns, he knew nothing. After yesterday's accident, he had transformed into his real-world appearance. He even obtained a new name. Not only had Kim Hajin officially begun his journey, he had also gained the ability to alter settings. But according to the system, he had to participate in the main storyline to return home. When luck is bad, even drinking cold water can choke you. Since he could end up in this world so miserably, he understood that principle very well. So the very first skill he upgraded was his luck stat. He exploited a loophole in the system. Sure enough, once blessed with his headaches disappeared and his legs no longer felt weak. He could even plow 2 miles of farmland non-stop. Still, he knew surviving under the watchful eyes of these clever people wouldn't be possible without showing real ability. Just like right now, everyone stared strangely, had the gun in his hand. Such a plain and ordinary thing could probably be picked up by an old lady selling popsicles and still fire a couple shots. How could it compare to the legendary weapons with rich histories in their hands? Because of this bold choice, he instantly became famous throughout the entire grade. Even the male lead, Kim Soo, heard about this newbie marksman during family training. But another archer, Chae Nayun, looked down on him completely. The disdain old money has toward new money was etched into her DNA. Still, he didn't care about gossip. The most important thing right now was improving his own abilities. Although his power to interfere with settings had improved, he was still the type who needed time to grow, and opportunities arrived quickly. While everyone was still in class, I know this for group combat training, quietly appeared. Other people dream of dramatic comebacks, but he just wanted to survive peacefully, even though he had mentally prepared himself. The moment he saw the group list, he completely lost composure. Help! Why was he grouped with the heroine? The heroine was ambushed, and the cannon fodder guy took down the enemy with one shot. There's only one word for it: cool. And that coolness would follow him for life. He didn't know whether being grouped with Yoo was a blessing or a curse. But since he had already decided to join the main storyline, sticking close to this young lady who drove the plot forward was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Of course, thinking about it was easy. Actually doing it was much harder. Within the golden wheat fields, one man and two women sprinted forward rapidly. Meanwhile, our cannon fodder protagonist stumbled miserably behind them. It felt like he could hear his ancestors calling him from the afterlife. Even university fitness tests weren't this brutal? Looking at Zhang Yang ahead, the three calmly discussed their strategy. As for that weakling, Kim Hajin, gave everything to Sister Yoo. Faced with such blatant provocation, he became extremely annoyed. Then let's wait and see. The tall guy charged first, trying to lure the monster onto the shore. But the cooler he acted while showing off, the more pathetic he looked while escaping. Just as the exploding little octopus was about to finish him off, Kim Hajin fired several shots decisively. In just a few moves, he wiped out all the little monsters, thanks to the system's godlike 3-second boost. His left hand and right hand moved in slow-motion perfection. He was basically a limited edition Flash. Reload, aim, shoot. Taking down a few octopus monsters was ridiculously easy. After that series of moves, even Yoo Yeonha was completely shocked. But she quickly recovered from her surprise. She swung her whip, restraining the monster, while coordinating with the team. Under the deadly barrage of magic and weapons, the monster finally collapsed with a miserable cry. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Kim Hajin also lay on the ground, yet narrowly escaped death. Meanwhile, Yoo Yeonha stared blankly at the results as if struck by lightning. They had actually ranked 16th in the grade. For a failing student, ranking 16th would make them laugh in their sleep. But for a top student like Yoo Yeonha, he probably felt worse than death. Especially since her rival had outperformed her. At that point, even random dogs on the street would probably get kicked by her. Still, Chae Nayun secretly even dragging along such dead weight, they still achieved such good results. Come to think of it, who exactly was that guy anyway? She had no memory of him at all. That night, while replaying the footage, she discovered that he had fired 60 shots in 3 seconds. Wasn't that basically cheating? His grades were terrible, yet his explosive power was insane. The white-haired second male lead, however, thought it was probably just dumb luck. Otherwise, wouldn't all their hard training in the practice rooms look pointless? Meanwhile, inside the guild headquarters, the vice captain was also watching the training footage. Naturally, a prodigy like the male lead attracted attention. But with just one glance, he noticed the boy, who used a gun as his weapon. He narrowed his eyes with interest while observing the young man. True gold fears no fire. He wanted to see what kind of storm this kid could stir up. Today's lesson was simulated water combat training. But when it became his turn, the mood suddenly changed completely. Why was he the only one who had to fight the instructor directly, just because his fake gun wasn't properly made? He strangely enjoyed the feeling of standing against the whole world. Even though he had clairvoyance that let him predict the opponent's movements, he still lacked physical strength. So all he could do was develop cautiously. However, the crowd gathering to watch the show actually earned him even more points. This worked too. Once he saved up enough of these points, he could max out his combat stats. Then he'd be able to walk around this academy sideways. If even supporting characters gave rewards, then getting close to the protagonists would probably multiply the rewards dramatically. After class, he casually tossed a can of cola to Yoo Yeonha as she passed by. After all, She was a character he himself had created. In a sense, he was basically her parent. How could he not know what she liked to eat and drink? But Miss Yoo, who acted all refined and aloof, naturally refused to accept it. She immediately tossed it back to him, and even warned him to mind his boundaries. But after walking away, the cola mysteriously appeared in her bag again. The brat really was shameless. Shocking. The cold goddess secretly loved cola. But only he knew that secret. Because the world he lived in was a novel. And he was the author of that novel. Unfortunately, he had now become a mere cannon fodder character. He only wanted to get closer to the protagonist so he could complete his mission sooner and return to his own world. But this attempt achieved almost nothing. It seemed he still had to interfere with the main storyline. The next major climax of the plot would be a battle against demons. Sure enough, the plot unfolded exactly as he had written it. First, he successfully joined the club, then he followed the protagonist group to participate in the museum event. But unexpectedly, he got paired with Yoo Yeonha again. Was this fate, or really fate? Still, Yoo Yeonha remained cautious around him. She shut down every attempt he made to get closer to her, so he could only wander off alone and approach the other protagonists of the male lead. Kim Soo-ho's flawless handsome face and humble, polite attitude made him incredibly likable. If Kim Hajin hadn't created him, he probably would have become insanely jealous. The two were still chatting when suddenly a huge explosion erupted. The crowd scattered in panic, and the scene became chaotic instantly. The demons had arrived. Kim Hajin was the first to react. He smashed the glass with one punch, grabbed a weapon, and aimed at the man wearing an evil smile. Kim Hajin remained calm as ever. This was just a villain meant to be sacrificed for the protagonist group to gain experience. Watching the male lead leap into action, he became even more relaxed. Wouldn't this be an easy win? Wait, why was this different from the original story? Why did you collapse? Chae Nayun panicked too. She frantically shot arrows at the monster, trying to buy time for her fallen teammate. But that thing regenerated crazily, like an undead corpse. The attacks barely affected it. Of course, the male lead wouldn't just stand by, dragging his injured body up by force. He kicked away the monster that was approaching Chae Nayun. But the creature instantly bounced back. Several clumps of black-red smoke floated and swirled through the air, then gathered together into the shape of a dragon. It caught the male lead's sword in one bite. Not good. It transformed. After being transported into a novel, he thought he had a god's perspective. He shouted for the male lead to get out of the way. The clown was actually himself. Then he aimed at the demon and pulled the trigger. A burst of brilliant light flashed past. Light and darkness opposed each other. The dark attribute demon was struck by a light attribute bullet. It clutched its wound in agony. He dropped to his knees and let out a long breath. Next came the male lead's finishing move. Kim Soo-ho's body shone with dazzling blue-white light. That was the unique power of a sword-same magic, capable of cutting through a thunderous explosion. The light faded, leaving only his heroic silhouette, and the demon lying defeated behind him. This time, it was truly over. The protagonist group collapsed onto the ground in exhaustion. Kim Hajin looked completely calm and in control. He comforted Chae Nayun, telling her not to worry because her brother would arrive soon. But instead of relief or gratitude, the strange looks from the two of them made his scalp tingle. Wasn't this exactly how he had written it? Had something changed again? At that moment, the vice captain had already dealt with the demons outside. When he learned that his prized student, Kim Soo-ho, was inside, his eyes lit up. He immediately sprinted over at full speed. Kim Hajin crashed into the woman rushing toward him. Before she could even ask anything, he pointed out where the male lead was. Don't ask how he knew. He was basically Cupid himself. Afterward, he found a place to sit down. Something about today felt completely wrong. He opened his laptop, hoping to find some clues, Then suddenly, a thought struck his head like a hammer. How could he forget that this novel had another author? At that moment, he suddenly remembered something extremely important. This novel had This world was probably based on the revised version of the story. If this world was built upon the Kothor's edited draft, then everything happening now would finally make sense. A terrifying thought slowly formed in his mind. If that was true, then predicting events based on his novel might now be completely useless. If that happened, he would lose the greatest advantage he had for surviving in this world. Everything was moving in a direction beyond his control. At that moment, a message on the computer caught his attention. When he opened it, the contents said that the novel lacked anything truly threatening to the protagonists. This kind of the heroes always win setup would eventually bore the readers. As he continued reading, the message proposed a temporary solution, even if the plot became chaotic. The enemy's strength had to be increased first. I accidentally entered the world of my own novel. Yet now, I was forced to consider killing one of the protagonists. After confirming that Kim Soo-ho and I were unharmed, the instructor didn't ask too many questions. Kim Soo-ho then asked about Chae Jin-yun's whereabouts. He was told that Chae Jin-yun had taken sick leave and already gone home. The instructor also told us to return quickly. Then he left on his own. At that moment, Kim Soo-ho suddenly stopped me. He asked why I had said those things to Chae Nayun earlier. I looked completely confused. Kim Soo-ho said it was about Chae Nayun's older brother. I remembered that she had always been very close to her brother. Just as I was about to explain, I suddenly remembered the email. So I changed the subject and asked what happened to her brother. But Kim Soo-ho assumed I was pretending not to know. Seeing that, he said nothing more. After returning to the dormitory, I immediately began searching for information about Chae Jin-yun. Everything still followed my original settings, until an inconspicuous note caught my eye. Chae Jin-yun was struck by a demon during the rescue operation. His injuries were severe. Although he defeated the enemy, he remained unconscious. What was this? The operation to suppress the demon was supposed to be the event where Chae Jin-yun, the protagonist's helper, earned honor and recognition. And the younger Chae Nayun was supposed to feel proud of her heroic brother. That was the original setting. Then I noticed there was another email. It contained the revised settings. The updates would only appear after I personally identified them. And the current situation existed because the protagonist had too many allies. So the setting had been changed. During the rescue operation, Chae Jin-yun became a demon seed. How could this happen? Looking at the modified settings, I couldn't accept them at all. Meanwhile, Chae Nayun, who had been sent to the hospital to recover, was listening to the news about today's museum incident. At that moment, her father, Chae Kyung-ho, rushed in anxiously. As soon as he entered, he worriedly asked about her condition. After hearing that she was fine, the burden in his heart finally eased. Then Chae Nayun said that before leaving the hospital, she wanted to visit her brother, looking at the sorrow in his daughter's eyes. Chae Kyung-ho agreed. A demon seed was a calamity left behind by demons for humanity. Once the seed inside a human matured and sprouted, that person would transform into a powerful demon. The incubation period was originally set to around 5 or 6 years. I couldn't help getting a headache, because more than half of Chae Jin-yun's incubation period had already passed. For this twisted situation, there was only one solution. Before the demon inside Chae Jin-yun awakened, he had to be killed. But Chae Jin-yun was a top-ranked hero candidate. No one would accept such an assassination request, and the seed's awakening had no warning signs. There was no way to prepare in advance. The current King Suho was also far too weak to stop the demon once it emerged. Even if active heroes were dispatched, casualties would still be unavoidable. But those people were all necessary. For the later stages of the story, everything seemed trapped in a dead end. In the end, I could only think of one method. I would kill him myself. Meanwhile, Chae Nayun visited her brother and talked about everything that had happened during this incident. After leaving the hospital room, Chae Nayun recalled the last thing I said to her again. My brother will come back soon and comfort me. Chae Nayun lowered her head, unable to suppress her emotions. When she raised her head again, her expression had become terrifyingly calm. She softly called out my name. How would the relationship between us develop from now on? With information worth billions, it was impossible not to gain an ally. Would you accept it? Inside the hero tower, Yoon Sunga ignored everyone's attempts to stop her and examined the records of today's museum attack incident. While cleaning up the aftermath, they discovered inside the demon's body traces of light attribute mana. That meant someone there could manipulate light attributes. And demons were almost always dark attribute. So the user of that light attribute naturally stood out. Even Yoon Sunga wanted to recruit such talent. This demon had been defeated by 3 Cube Academy students. Kim Suho and Chae Nayun had already been identified. And because of that, Yoon Sunga heard my name for the first time. Cube Academy ranked 934. Kim Hajin. Not long ago, I realized something. Other people couldn't see the notebook at all. Thanks to that, I could conveniently confirm the settings. At the same time, I discovered the notebook had gained a new function. If nearby there existed a setting different from the novel's original plot, a notification would appear. Just as I was pondering this new feature, an unexpected guest appeared behind me. Chae Nayun was standing there, staring straight at me with killing intent in her eyes. She demanded a duel with me. I more or less understood how she felt now, but I still refused directly. No matter how much Chae Nayun provoked me, I remained completely unmoved. I bluntly said it was dangerous and that I didn't want her injuries to make me feel guilty. Thankfully, the head instructor arrived in time and told Chae Nayun to leave. As I watched her back, I realized there was still no need to apologize. Right now, I was desperately trying to become stronger. For the sake of killing her brother. Trying to improve our relationship now would only make things more painful in the future. Inside the academic club, the president was introducing the club's activities. Watching Yoo Yeonha radiate a charming aura on stage, I, who knew the script, clearly understood that this was a demon's power. Among the many incidents that would soon occur at Cube, she was one of the key figures. The villain had made a contract with the demon Lilith and obtained mind control abilities. And my previous target, as well as the reason I joined, was Yoo Yeonha, who sat nearby. Information regarding high-level monsters was extremely valuable. Critical information in particular was worth at least tens of billions of won. Today's topic was the upper-level monster, the Mountain Tyrant. Its weakness had not yet been discovered. At the end, Yoo Yeonha said that during today's dinner gathering, everyone could share their opinions about it. With that, the meeting came to an end. As everyone was leaving, I stopped Yoo Yeonha before she left. I asked if she would attend the dinner gathering, but the girl merely glanced at me and walked past without another word. Only after I mentioned the mirror did she finally respond. Honestly, this woman was going to drive me crazy someday. I could more or less guess. The purpose of Yoo Yeonha, she simply wanted to gather some potentially useful information to the Yu family guild. The guild controlled the underground business in the Strait of Jinshui, a massive guild that supported all of Korea. I heard the vice guild leader had recently gained tremendous influence. Even Yoo Yeonha, the legitimate heir, felt threatened by him. Yoo Yeonha impatiently asked what exactly I wanted to say. I directly told her. The mountain tyrant's weak point. It was the blue pattern on the back of its heel. Attacking that spot would immobilize the mountain tyrant. Of course, I wasn't giving Yoo Yeonha this information for free. I hoped to obtain one of the desert artifacts from their guild vault. Yoo Yeonha looked at me as I spoke confidently and asked what evidence I had for my claims. I confidently answered that I had none. After a brief silence, Yoo Yeonha cursed about how I had wasted her time while leaving in anger. If she didn't believe me and leaked the information, the billions worth of information would become worthless paper. But if she believed me, then I would gain an ally. Meanwhile, after leaving the guild, Yoo Yeonha immediately called her family. The topic of the call was exactly the weakness of the mountain tyrant that I had mentioned. It seemed I had won the gamble. I won. I had gained an ally who would later be called the King of S2. I unexpectedly arrived in the world of my own novel, only to suddenly discover that I owed a massive loan. That day, I stared blankly at the loan notice in my hand. I owed money to Trinity Loans. What the hell had Kim Hajin been doing? Looking at the bank book, I only had 3 million won left. Good grief. At this rate, forget returning to the original world. I might spend my whole life repaying debt. It seemed I had to find a way to make money now. But since this was my novel world, there were still ways to earn money. One method was through stocks. Although I knew which guilds would go public, I currently had no capital, so I temporarily put stock trading aside. The second method was through hunting grounds. Hunting grounds were dangerous areas where monsters appeared. By selling the corpses of hunted monsters, you could earn money. Although all my current abilities already exceeded the average adult male's level, that level of strength was still insufficient for entering hunting grounds. And I didn't want to waste SP points on strengthening firearm training. Just as I was racking my brains for a solution, a package arrived outside the door. It was sent by Yoo Yeonha. I walked out in confusion and opened the package. Inside was a map of the East Sea area pointing toward the plains near Wonju. It was a relatively low-level hunting ground. People from all over the world came here to hunt. That was why it was also called an international metropolis. Groups trading and forming parties could be seen everywhere. Looking at the situation, joining an agency would make it easier to sell monster resources. Just as I was planning to find an agent, a refined middle-aged man walked over. He said he wanted to recommend himself. Looking at the slightly clumsy man, I did not pay much attention at first. I casually accepted the business card he handed me and examined it. But once I looked carefully, I was immediately shocked. He was actually Park Soo, the future best agent in all of Korea. In the original novel, he was the agent who worked for Kim Soo. I never expected to meet him here. I immediately reached out and asked him to sign a contract with me. The inexperienced Park Soo was stunned by how decisively I signed with him. He became so excited that he started waving his arms around. At that moment, I suddenly realized something. It felt like I had stolen Kim Soo-ho's future agent. Was that really okay? Watching him stubbornly follow beside me, I became a little worried about this seemingly naive man. Still, he insisted repeatedly, so I could not say much more. Soon, Park Soo-ho noticed footprints on the ground belonging to goblins. He suggested hunting those. But in my opinion, the profit would be too small. Far too little. I randomly pointed toward a steel board below the cliff. Park Soo-ho tried to persuade me, saying that even guns could barely penetrate that monster's armor. But I did not care. I confidently replied that my gun was different. Then, I pulled out the weapon I had traded from Yoo Yeonha. A Desert Eagle. I had also used SP points to add a special setting to it. As the gunshot rang out, the steel bore, which was said to be nearly indestructible, was pierced straight through. It collapsed instantly. Seeing the result, Park Soo-ho was completely dumbfounded. This gun was truly incredible. Between the person you love and the person who loves you, which side would you choose? Looking at the pistol after the smoke cleared, I could only admire what a fine gun it was. I aimed into the distance again, and casually shot down a black fur fox with one bullet. Park Soo-ho was still wondering how I could even see that far away. What he did not know was that for me, 1,000 miles fell right before my eyes. After gathering the two monster corpses together, I watched Park Soo-ho efficiently arrange the follow-up handling. Honestly, this truly was the kind of treatment only a protagonist received in novels. I was more than happy to leave everything to him, so I simply handed all responsibility over to him. Our first cooperation ended very pleasantly, and the first thing I did after getting money was definitely buying stocks. The Rookie Guild Overlord of Demon Suppression was an extremely important guild. After conquering the dungeon water mushroom, its stock price soared by nearly 1,000%. Buying it was basically guaranteed profit. Even robbery would not make money this quickly. I used my entire fortune of 3 million won to buy shares of Overlord of Demon Suppression. I also began thinking about what other useful stock information existed in the novel. Then something suddenly came to mind. In the novel, the Chameleon Troupe was the main villain organization until the middle and late stages. The identities of its members were completely unknown to the public. But as the author, I naturally knew their information and activity locations. Although the Chameleon Troupe were criminals, they were extremely skilled at dealing with demons. Perhaps I could use them to help me kill Chae Nayun. Just as I was about to start planning things regarding the troupe, something happened. The computer suddenly started loading. As the screen abruptly went black, I completely panicked. This was the only way for me to return to my original world. But when the screen lit up again, the computer functions had started updating. Meanwhile, elsewhere, inside a restaurant, Yoo Yeonha was enthusiastically asking Kim Soo-ho about recent events at school. Kim Soo-ho appeared completely indifferent, giving only perfunctory answers. At that moment, the bell at the entrance rang. Chae Nayun walked in. Kim Soo-ho immediately changed his attitude, even warmly going forward to greet her. The roles completely reversed, seeing how warmly Kim Soo-ho treated Chae Nayun. Yoo Yeonha felt a complicated mix of emotions. Then Chae Nayun suddenly mentioned Kim Hajin, pulling Yoo Yeonha back to reality. She asked what had happened with Kim Hajin again. Chae Nayun then brought up the museum incident from before. At the time, the battle against the demon had reached a stalemate. At the critical moment, Kim Hajin used a support gun and fired a single shot, blowing off one of the demon's arms. That completely turned the battle around. Since Yoo Yeonha had interacted with Kim Hajin before, she wanted to hear his opinion of him. Inside Yoo Yeonha's mind, she quickly reviewed all the information about me. The more she thought about it, the more mysterious I seemed. In the end, she chose not to comment too much. She also remembered how, earlier, during practical combat training, the strength I displayed was nowhere near enough to destroy a demon's arm. That only made Yoo Yeonha even more curious. Meanwhile, Chae Nayun actually suspected that I was a demon. Although Yoo Yeonha immediately rejected the idea, that woman clearly had personal feelings mixed in. It was obvious. As the computer finished updating, My arms suddenly began glowing. A wave of intense pain followed immediately after. Blood flowed down my arm. At the same time, a voice kept exploding inside my mind. Information about the Stigma crashed into me like a tidal wave. Meanwhile, inside the restaurant, regarding the conversation just now, Kim Suho asked Chae Nayun whether she hated me and received a positive answer. It seemed another storm was about to come. At that moment, I had already fainted in the dormitory. Beside me, the computer quietly displayed the contents of this update. How troublesome is it to offend a vindictive woman? Today, I'll tell you through personal experience. Inside the tower of the Vassal Association, a commendation ceremony was being held for our heroic actions during the museum incident. I sat in the room clutching my arm. Yesterday's wound was still throbbing with pain. I was still wondering what kind of ability this was. Suddenly, Chae Nayun, who was sitting beside me, looked at me and said I was annoying. What's wrong with this woman again? The problem is, I hadn't even said anything yet, but she was already angry. I even brought up the fact that I saved her before. Yet, she still looked unwilling. She kept trying to argue with me again. Seriously, never casually offend a woman. It's a terrible idea. Kim Suha also stepped forward and switched seats with Chae Nayun. Looking at the female lead beside my enemy made me numb inside. Kim Suho sat next to me and thanked me for what happened at the museum. But I thought that even without me, they probably could have handled it. In fact, King Su might even have awakened an even higher level of power. After all, the protagonist always becomes stronger in dangerous situations. As the staff called out loudly, the important guest of this event appeared. A tall, muscular, and carefree-looking man walked in. Yoo Seok ranked 37th on the hero rankings. One of the top heroes, known as a Wolf of Valhalla. As the man moved, you could clearly feel an enormous wave of magical power. He was practically a walking humanoid weapon. And with Yoo Seok's arrival, the commendation ceremony officially began. Watching Yoo Seok extend an olive branch to Kim Suho, and even becoming Chinahan's mentor, they chatted happily together. But when he came to me, he looked completely confused and asked who I was. That's the difference between a protagonist and a side character. Sadness is more indifferent than hatred. That perfectly described my current situation. The ceremony ended smoothly after Chae Nayun's speech. Still, this wasn't entirely without benefits. This reward money completely wiped away all my sadness. As for this money, I plan to use it to buy more shares of Demon Slaughterer stock. But right now, I first needed to understand the updated functions. The computer showed that the wound carved onto my arm yesterday could be controlled according to my will, and would slowly recover afterward. Looking at the vague description, I wanted to test it out. As a result, my body suddenly lit up in the crowd. That scene nearly scared me to death. I decided to wait until I returned to the dormitory before confirming it again. As for the next function, the internet could connect to a list of stations for trading. This feature was incredibly useful to me. Among them, Purple Smoke Society was especially important. It was basically a place where anything could be traded. There wasn't a single hero who hadn't dealt with it. Even the government tacitly allowed its existence. Its influence was absolutely terrifying. Joining the Purple Smoke Society normally required a huge entrance fee, but I only needed 200 SP to obtain an account. Just as I was about to connect to it, Yoon Sunga suddenly came to find me and directly handed me her business card. Naturally, I knew how significant it was for Yoon Sunga to hand someone her card. Looking at the woman sitting across from me, I wondered what she was plotting this time. I unexpectedly arrived in the novel world I had written, and now I was even being bullied on campus. Yoon sat across from me. She looked gentle and approachable, but I knew very well what a cold and ruthless woman she really was. Even talented people she personally recruited would be mercilessly abandoned if they failed to meet her expectations. She was a complete utilitarian. So when Yoon tried asking me about the demon incident from before, I rejected her outright. Yoon was stunned on the spot. When had someone of her status ever been treated like this? Although she claimed she was concerned about me, in reality, she was only interested in my light attribute attacks. I had to reject her now, so that her interests wouldn't remain superficial. After saying that, I directly took my leave, leaving Yoon frozen in place. She couldn't recover from the shock for a long time. Back in the dormitory, I continued researching the Stigma's abilities. Simply put, whatever I imagined, the Stigma could manifest it into reality like a miracle. As expected of one of the creator's omnipotent powers, since magic power was the foundation of this world, the Stigma also allowed someone like me, who couldn't use magic, to finally relax. This update also added a new ability, the Book of Truth. When I silently invoked Book of Truth through the Stigma, a book woven from magical power appeared before my eyes. This book contained truth itself. As long as enough magic power was available, he could answer anything. Immediately, I asked the first crucial question on my mind. What is my height? Unexpectedly, it answered correctly. At the same time, he consumed one SP. Just then, an emergency notice came through. A missing student was being searched for. Looking at the message, I realized that the second major storyline had begun. The serial disappearance case, imitation. Within a single month, 6 students had disappeared consecutively. Yet there were absolutely no clues. The number of missing people was also increasing day by day. This small incident was extremely important, because the killer's final target was Yoo Yeonha. And I was worried that the intervention of the co-author might cause changes in the storyline. If the protagonist lost an important supporter, that would be a huge problem. I wanted to go catch the culprit directly, but I was worried that interfering rashly with the story might cause trouble. What a difficult dilemma. Inside the training room, I actually encountered campus bullying. Several delinquent-looking students surrounded me for no reason, constantly mocking and provoking me. Kim Suho wanted to step in and defend me, but the class leader Yeonha stopped him. Yeonha realized this was new middle school's doing. Interfering recklessly would only put them at a disadvantage. Besides, Yeonha thought I was just acting. After the demon incident, my performance seemed to have caused some misunderstanding about me. But in reality, my physical abilities were truly terrible. Even one of the bullies couldn't stand watching anymore. Kim Suho finally stepped forward, raising his voice to scold them. The instructor also arrived in time, angrily shouting about what they were doing during training hours. The moment he spoke, the entire room immediately fell silent. The instructor came over, and also brought the results of the previous written exam. And someone as smart as me, naturally, casually took first place. After all, copying the settings I wrote myself was only natural. But Rachel beside me looked completely furious. This genius ranked 3rd in the entrance exams suddenly reminded me of her character setting. Ever since enrollment, her exam results were always supposed to rank 1st. Looks like I caused trouble again. If you knew the culprit behind a serial murder case, as well as the next victim, would you choose to save strangers? Even if it meant facing unpredictable consequences. As a foreign princess, Rachel carried the honor of her entire nation. She enrolled in Cube to uphold the reputation of the royal family. But now this princess looked extremely depressed. The teacher stood at the podium, continuously praising my exam answers for their unique insight. Rachel could only think about how to surpass me now. But when she saw my absent-minded expression, as if I were thinking about something else entirely, she got irritated. What exactly had this guy been studying all this time? How could she possibly lose to him? Back in the dormitory, I logged into the Purple Banquet's intelligence office. Now that I had finally obtained the Book of Truth, such an amazing ability should naturally be used to make money. As long as I had enough SP points, I could uncover any information. So I directly registered as a seller at the Purple Banquet to become an information broker. It was also time to invest some SP points. The start of the second main storyline meant that Cube was no longer a safe place. With my current abilities alone, I was still far from capable of dealing with demons. I needed stronger means of self-defense. Fortunately, thanks to the bullying from the new middle school gang, my SP was fully charged into my weapon. With a trial and error mindset, I added a transformation function. The handgun could now transform into a sniper rifle. Even I thought this was ridiculously overpowered. But after consuming 250 SP points, it truly became a massive upgrade. Combat memories, as acquired skills, represented physical techniques and talents honed afterward. Considering that I was a marksman, positioning was especially important, so I added parkour as one of those memories. Another 350 SP points were consumed. At that moment, I received another group text. Someone else had disappeared. The second victim. I knew very clearly that every victim before Yoo Yeonha had been mercilessly murdered. I knew the killer, and I also knew the next victim, as these once insignificant side characters appeared before me as living, breathing people. Could I really ignore their deaths so coldly? I was struggling intensely inside, at Cube's outdoor training ground. Today's session was a special combat exercise. We would enter an artificial dungeon, filled with monsters. Today's training objective was to conquer the artificial dungeon. This training exercise was conducted jointly between the Truth and Doubt classes. Each class was divided into 2 groups, with each group entering for combat training. The artificial dungeon was filled with all kinds of traps, including several traps made by demons. Just in case, I prepared some makeshift bullets. Unexpectedly, right at that moment, a notification suddenly popped up saying the settings had changed. My heart trembled. This time, there were 3 changes at once. Just as I was checking the reason behind these changes, Zhao Yuan from the Dao class impatiently came over to call me to gather. Setting changed. Zhao Yuna has become even more withdrawn than before. Nearby, the warmly greeting Jae-kyung. Setting changed. Growth potential increased by 0.5. The gentle and refined Chae-bon. Setting changed. Mental weakness has worsened. High probability of being consumed by the demon's minions. I accepted these notifications in disbelief. This was an enormous shift in the story. Holding on to lofty dreams, only to have reality ruthlessly shatter them, and being forced to accept one's own ordinariness. What would you do then? As for these setting changes, I still felt extremely uneasy. There were currently 2 people I needed to pay attention to. One was Jae-kyung, although he was powerful enough to be recruited by the Jinsu Straight Guild. He was also the typical arrogant type. What exactly did his increase in potential mean? The 2 groups introduced their members to each other. But Yoo Yeonha, that woman. He deliberately pronounced my name wrong. Leaving Jaden aside for now. The important one next was Spen, the rising hero star of the Empire. One thing to especially note was that he admired Kanayu. Like many foreign exchange students, Spen also came here, dreaming of reaching the peak of the cube. But reality clearly did not go as he wished. compared to the monster-like talents of the other students. He became just another ordinary student that also caused spin in pursuit of power, to sell his soul to a demon. Up to this point, everything matched what I had written, but the problem was the inconsistencies during the dungeon raid. I could only hope the awakening happening early would not affect the story too much. Just then, Jaden suddenly spoke to me. Grabbing my shoulder, I helplessly brushed his hand away. Recently, my reputation had been terrible. People said I used my status as a Cube Academy student to threaten others. There were even rumors about me going out to indulge every week. The hostility was obvious everywhere, but thanks to the Shin Middle School group, my SP was increasing very quickly. Still, no one in the team was willing to talk to me, which made me sigh helplessly. As each squad entered the dungeon one after another, Jaden kept talking non-stop the entire time. I was getting extremely annoyed. Finally, it was our turn to enter. The first area inside was a forked path. While everyone was hesitating about which route to take, I suggested taking Route 6, but these guys clearly were not fond of my suggestion. Fortunately, although Yoo Yeonha spoke harshly, he still chose to trust me. Thanks to him, we were able to continue forward smoothly. If we chose wrongly, and Spence signed that demon contract here, Chae Nayun probably would not be able to endure it. If something happened to him, all the later events of the story would fall apart. This was an opportunity that absolutely could not be lost. Inside this pitch-black cave, my clairvoyance spotted a lava beast ahead. As smoke and flames burst out, it fully revealed itself. The team immediately entered combat mode. Jaden asked the team if anyone could use water element attacks. Although I could, now is not the right time to reveal it. Seeing that no one answered, Yoo Yeonha directly chose to attack hit. He swung his whip straight at the lava beast, forcefully interrupting its attack. The other two teammates followed up immediately, and managed to capture the lava beast without much danger. Looking at the light glowing on Yoo Yeonha's sword, I thought to myself, has he already reached the verge of awakening? What an incredible guy. But suddenly, I slipped, accidentally knocking Yoo Yeonha down and pinning him to the ground. Cold sweat instantly poured down my back. My mind was already imagining 100 different ways to die. Just as he was about to punch me, another teammate stopped him. An arrow had just shot through the place where Yoo Yeonha had been standing. It was an arrow coated with neurotoxin. Meanwhile, on the other side, an arrow was stuck in Spen's back. Chae Nayun was carrying him away in panic, filled with guilt and self-blame. Spen was shaken by the poisoned arrow that had come from nowhere. Even more absurdly, why would such a thing appear in an artificial dungeon? A monster as huge as a mountain. I unexpectedly arrived in the world of the novel I wrote. Yet now I was stuck doing thankless work. Even after saving people, I still got scolded. Inside the artificial cave, flames blazed everywhere. Each squad was carrying out its own training. Every team was doing everything it could to display its unique abilities. Our squad was no exception. So far, everything had been going smoothly. Aside from that arrow, we had not encountered any other traps, but I still could not stop thinking about that arrow. Was it really just a trap? Suddenly, an overwhelming sense of danger surged through me. A powerful energy fluctuation appeared behind me. I turned around to look behind me. It was the two lava creatures we had just defeated. They were still alive. One of them opened its mouth and shot a powerful stream of fire at me. Only when the earth shield erupted did the other team members finally realize what was happening. I had no time to think. At the critical moment, I used the Holy Grave to counter it. The waterless shield barely managed to block the attack. The lava monster also seemed to be on its last breath. After launching that attack, it collapsed, looking at the devastation around us. Everyone was still stunned by the terrifying power of that attack. People began doubting whether these were really just puppets. The flames had not even touched them directly, yet they were already burned. At that moment, Jaden stormed over and grabbed my collar. When we were asking for someone with water abilities, "Why didn't you say anything?" I explained that it was the effect of magical equipment. But he refused to believe me. This guy was unbelievably arrogant. Yoo Yeonha stepped in to stop him, and only then did it end. Everyone eventually concluded that the lava beast's mutation was caused by the environment. Still, my explanation made Yoo Yeonha suspicious. After all, among the students, those capable of infusing attributes into magic power and Shinshunghak. Yoo Yeonha could not help wondering why I was hiding it. Could I really be hiding something? Chae Nayun's squad discovered a magma rock monster. This mountain-like beast looked exactly like a dungeon boss. Kano decided to regroup with the other squads first, before trying to capture it together. For the moment, they chose to hide. After all, Spen was injured. Spen blamed himself for dragging everyone down. Thinking back, ever since arriving at the cube, nothing he had done had gone smoothly for someone as prideful as him. It was an unbearable humiliation. The emotions piling up inside him eventually turned into unwilling tears. And when the heart is at its weakest, that is often when demons invade. Faced with the demon's temptation, Spen accepted it, and the demon immediately began devouring him. As Spen let out agonized screams, it caught the attention of his teammates. The teammates worriedly gathered around him. But those screams also caught the attention of the magma rock monster. It gave the third squad no time to react at all. The magma monster directly spewed out torrents of lava. The battle was about to erupt instantly. I unexpectedly arrived in the world of Obisai's novel, facing this overpowered boss. Could the protagonists successfully deal with it? As the magma rock monster launched an attack, it directly blasted a hole through the maze wall. Just the aftershock alone knocked Chae Nayun and the others to the ground, and the monster had already arrived before Chae Nayun. This gigantic creature whose full form could not even be seen at a glance. How were they supposed to deal with it? A feeling of helplessness filled their hearts. How could this possibly be a puppet? They wanted to run, but there was nowhere to escape. They wanted to resist, but could not harm it in the slightest. Despair and unwillingness filled Chae Nayun's heart. At that moment, a light blue bullet pierced through space. It struck directly into the back of the monster's head. At the critical moment, it finally halted the monster's advance. That's right, I made it in time. A few minutes earlier, our path had suddenly been blocked by a giant boulder. Jaden started complaining helplessly again. I guess there was probably a boss on the other side of the wall. I suggested smashing it open to take a look, although Jaden kept saying arrogant things. His body still honestly moved into action. After he unleashed a powerful slash, the rock wall remained completely unharmed. Instead, Jaden was left grimacing in pain. Even a magic-infused strike was useless. Just as I was worrying about it, not knowing what to do, Su Wengyu discovered a gap in the rock wall. There was a crack above it, about 10 meters high. Great, I decided to climb over from there. Under Jaden's doubtful gaze, I lightly tapped my fingers. Luckily, I had practiced parkour before. That nearly vertical 10-meter wall was climbed in just a few leaps. I disappeared from everyone's stunned sight. Back to the present, that single bullet of mine only managed to freeze the monster for an instant. I hurriedly shouted at Chae Nayun, "This is the time to pull yourself together." And also, looking at the magma monster suddenly turning toward me. My face turned pale. Somebody save me. At that moment, a loud battle cry shattered the stalemate. Amid flashing blades and swords, Kanazi's teammates arrived. Seeing this, Chae Nayun finally regained his composure. He told his teammates to buy him some time. Hearing that, everyone charged forward fearlessly, doing everything they could to stall for time. Then, one sudden attack actually managed to injure the magma rock monster. Spen had somehow appeared on top of the magma monster. With Spen's agile movements, he alone managed to hold back the magma rock monster. That bought enough time for Chae Nayun's attack. Inside Chae Nayun's mind, various scenes from the past flashed by, remembering his former powerless self. And now, would Chae Nayun finally become different? That sword strike tore through the air, flying straight toward the magma monster. And the incomparably tough magma rock creature was blasted into pieces by that attack. How would you feel? Being thanked by a proud and strong-willed girl inside the cruel dungeon. Looking at the defeated magma monster, everyone felt an unreal sense of disbelief. The third squad excitedly discussed the battle. As for me, I looked at Spen in the crowd staring at Chae Nayun. Spen showed absolutely no signs of being demonized. Not at all. The plot had changed again. But perhaps it had only delayed the time. When he would sign the demon contract, the situation was becoming worse and worse. Chae Nayun noticed me sitting on a pile of rubble nearby. After struggling internally for a moment, he awkwardly walked over. He actually came to thank me. I could hardly believe it. Those were words I never expected Chae Nayun to say. He actually thanked me. In the novel, Chae Nayun's life was filled with tragedy. On his 6th birthday, his mother was killed by demons. From then on, he resolved to become a hero, at the age when others laughed and enjoyed their youth. Young Chae Nayun spent every day training alone with relentless effort. He had no friends he could open his heart to, because to Chae Nayun that meant exposing weakness. It was shameful for such a proud and strong-willed girl. Very few people had ever heard her express gratitude, and as true friends. There were very few people who truly stood by Chae Nayun's side, yet this simple expression of thanks caused waves to stir. Inside me as the author, Chae Nayun was still confused about how I could stop the rampaging magma monster with a single shot, yet still get bullied by the Shin Middle School group. I directly told him that it was because of my homemade weapon. If I really used it on people, injuries would be the least of the consequences. That was also why Chae had once been suspended after his homemade weapon was discovered. But I did not care. That brought up Sing Heng again. You could actually hide weapons inside Sing Heng. How incredibly convenient. Chae Nayun's imagination was really wild. He wondered whether I had the talent to enhance firearms. She truly was a girl who loved and hated boldly. Chae Nayun turned around and prepared to leave. But after taking only a few steps, she stopped again. Did I have anything I wanted to say to her? I said nothing. I knew very well what she wanted me to say. If I apologized now, she would probably forgive me. But I could not, because I had to kill Chae Nayun. Suddenly, an announcement ordered everyone to immediately stop the raid and evacuate the dungeon at once. Multiple problems had occurred in this dungeon. Some of the internal cameras had malfunctioned as well, preventing them from discovering in time that real monsters had invaded the dungeon. Fortunately, there were no casualties. Afterward, Cube announced that it would conduct its own investigation. In other words, the demons occupying executive positions within Cube had covered up the incident. The investigation into this event would only begin after the second gap ended. Was that really the case? But for now, I should focus on Spen's problem. To prevent him from becoming demonized, I needed to constantly monitor the movements of Spin and Chae Nayun. I had to avoid Chae Nayun, meeting a terrible fate, though I felt a bit guilty. For the sake of safety, I still chose to log into Chae Nayun's chat tool and look through their conversation history. That was when I learned they were going to the hunting club this week. This was also the original day Spin was supposed to lose control. I had already grown stronger to a certain extent, so I had some plans in mind now. At that moment, my communication watch suddenly rang. Kim Suho suddenly contacted me, asking whether I was free on Friday. He had something he wanted to ask of me. A person who would bring great disaster in the future. Even if they were still just a child now. If it were you, how would you handle it? Yari Mountain in Gangwon Province, a land blessed by feng shui, where righteous energy and spiritual energy intertwined. Since ancient times, it had been called the perfect cultivation ground by martial artists. But not everyone who came here was a martial artist. Because spiritual energy was abundant, the depths of these sacred mountains were rich in precious treasures. Listening to the man in front of me enthusiastically ramble on, looking completely fascinated, I honestly did not know what to say anymore. Even though I repeatedly denied it, that middle-aged man still believed I came here to hunt for treasure. To strike it rich overnight. He even told me to follow the map carefully. Otherwise, I would not even see the mountain's tail. I seriously could not take it anymore. As soon as I finally got away from him, I ran off at full speed. Back when I first saw the magma monster, I had not even run this fast. But suddenly, I tripped over something. Turning around to look, I found mountain ginseng while climbing the cliff. I chewed on the 7-year-old mountain ginseng. This ginseng could temporarily enhance one's abilities. This mountain ginseng was probably worth 700 million. Thinking about it made me a little emotional, but as my footing slipped, I nearly fell down. This cliff was really high, but thanks to that, it still had not been discovered. Hidden halfway up this cliff was the Undead Dungeon. Although the boss here was already dead, I still had absolutely no way to deal with it right now. But that was fine, because my destination was a hidden stage inside this dungeon. Watching the undead stretch their hands out, one after another, I pulled out the Desert Eagle from St. Gate. One shot, one kill. At the same time, I used clairvoyance to confirm the route. After navigating through the maze-like passages, all the undead were wiped out. Seeing more and more undead emblems, I realized I was getting closer and closer to the headquarters of this mission's target. The Witch of Ansk, the hidden boss of this dungeon. Later, on a bridge near the water source, she would build the worst undead fortress in history, Evans City. But the reason I targeted her was because I could obtain 2 items from Evans: the growth type equipment, Aether, and Evans's seed. Originally, these were meant for the demon Tomer to help him become one of Bel's executives. But for me right now, Aether was the perfect item. Using clairvoyance, I finally found Evans sitting deep inside the cave. Deep within the cavern sat Eva, an adult which would be extremely difficult to deal with. To obtain those items, I had to act while both her body and mind were still incomplete, looking at Evans in the form of a little girl. I had no choice but to make this decision. Using St. Mark, I formed a Spear of Light attribute. Then I unleashed the attack with all my strength. As the smoke cleared, I was surprised to see Vance still alive, but it was only a final flash before death, watching the little girl like witch slowly crumble apart. Before my eyes, inside my heart, I could not describe what I was feeling. Just as I expected, I obtained Aether and Evans's seed. Love comes with risks. Confess your feelings and get imprisoned. Turn into a demon on the spot and explode with the acquisition of Aether. My ability stats also improved. The binding effect of Aether was truly excellent. Only now could I truly be considered a student of Cube. This time, I also gained quite a bit of SP. As for the mountain ginseng, I plan to put it up for sale in the Purple Smoke Market. But the greatest harvest this time was probably this little thing. Yvonne's seed. As long as I raised it properly, it could become a reliable ally for me. The method of raising it was also simple. I only needed to feed it a small amount of blood. However, depending on whose blood it consumed, Yvonne's personality would change differently. I repeatedly went to the protagonists, asking for blood. But they treated me like some kind of pervert. I might as well keep it for now. And starting tomorrow, the real story begins. The hunting club event was about to start. The person in charge of the Gangwon hunting club was arranging this event. The hunting club helps citizens by hunting harmful creatures. What worried me more was today's unexpected incident. According to the original plot, Chae Nayun would be severely injured this time, and Spen would die after losing control under the influence of demonic power. This incident was meant to make Kim Soo-ho mistakenly believe that the demon's target was Chae Nayun, when all the investigation teams focused on Chae Nayun. The demons hiding in the shadows would then extend their claws toward the real target. But this time, Spen's character settings was somewhat different from the original story. Up until now, he still had not lost control, although he had already used demonic power. I looked over at Sibin. I was calculating in my mind. If I could eliminate him here, there would be nothing to worry about. But if I fought him right now, I obviously wouldn't win. At that moment, Chae Nayun seemed to notice me looking in his direction. And it looked like she had some strange misunderstanding about me. Sibin warned Chae Nayun to be careful, hinting that I might be connected to the recent disappearances. But Chae Nayun denied it immediately. The unwavering trust gradually made Sibin's expression turn cold. As the activity continued, Sibin used the demon's power and easily won the bet. Having lost, Chae Nayun followed the agreement and agreed to grant one of Sibin's wishes. Blushing, Sibin gathered the courage to confess to Chae Nayun, and I watched all of this from the shadows. I had even prepared Aether Knight already, ready to make a move at any moment, but unexpectedly, Chae Nayun clearly showed no interest. She even bluntly said she liked people stronger than herself. Those words completely shattered Sibin emotionally. But Chae Nayun did not notice anything strange about Sibin. She turned around to leave. Right at that moment, Sibin lost control. He suddenly launched an attack toward Chae Nayun. Countless tentacles instantly rushed toward Chae Nayun. But after the attack, as the smoke cleared, a transparent golden shield slowly appeared. The shield had appeared just as I turned around to ask Chae Nayun what happened. I never expected Sibin's tentacles to move so quickly. They suddenly appeared behind me, directly choking my throat and throwing me away. I struggled desperately. Chae Nayun was also extremely anxious, gathering magical power to come save me, looking at the demon who kept claiming to love her. Sibin condensed magical power in his hands. Sometimes, some talented characters in this world often choose weapons that don't suit them at first. Their true abilities are usually born under special circumstances. And I dare to say, the first among them is this proud girl. Chae Nayun gripped a gigantic sword towering to the sky, smiling fearlessly amid her angry shouts. I unexpectedly arrived in the novel world, I wrote. And now the protagonist suspects me of being a demon's accomplice. On the ground, the last remnants of Sibin's magical power gradually dissipated. Chae Nayun looked at the giant magic sword fading from her hands, completely confused. But after confirming I was safe, she suddenly collapsed unconscious. In the blink of an eye, it was already late at night. Chae Nayun slowly woke up in a daze. She realized I was carrying her on my back and immediately struggled she noisily demanded that I put her down. After repeatedly confirming, I finally put her down. But the moment her feet touched the ground, she instantly collapsed backwards stiffly. She realized she completely couldn't control her legs anymore. I looked at Chae Nayun and helplessly asked her whether this was her first time exhausting all her magic. Her confused expression already gave me the answer. I explained to her that she probably wouldn't be able to walk for 2 days. There was no other choice. With Chae Nayun's body stiffened, I carried her on my back once again. I asked Chae Nayun whether she still planned to use a bow in the future. After all, she had already awakened her talent. This unrivaled large-scale attack ability would be unstoppable in large-scale wars. She was practically a battlefield weapon. For the sake of that future, Chae Nayun should probably abandon the bow now. But Chae Nayun suddenly became angry and started making a fuss on my back again. Seeing that the road ahead was connected, I simply pressed the little girl down onto a bench. I pinned her head against a chair. Could I really leave her behind like this? The incident of Chae Nayun being attacked by a demon quickly spread throughout the school. Everyone became uneasy about the fact that demons existed among the students. I arrived at a meeting room. All the important people had gathered there. The day before the club incident, Kim Soo-ho had asked for help investigating the missing student's case in order to keep outsiders from interfering. With this incident, Cube assigned the task of finding the culprit to the students. But I didn't understand why Kim Soo-ho came to ask me for help. Kim Soo-ho explained that he heard I had sharp judgment, and Chae Nayun had also recommended me. I never expected that to be the reason. Now that everyone had gathered, Kim Soo-ho began the discussion. Kim Soo-ho believed that the disappearances and the demon who attacked Nayun were not the same person. But before he could finish speaking, Shin Jong-hak suddenly stomped hard enough to shatter the stairs. He looked furious, because Kim Soo-ho had called Nayun by her name, making them seem very close. So he got angry. Kim Soo-ho helplessly corrected himself, then continued by saying that Chae Nayun was very likely the demon's next target. Because if it was a demon contracted with Sibon that had targeted Chae Nayun, then other demons contracted with the same devil would also target her. I sat to the side, wondering if we should really just wait quietly for them to solve it, unlike before, when 6 people died over 2 months. Now, 3 people had already disappeared in just 2 weeks. At this rate, there could be even more victims. I clenched my fists tightly. In my mind appeared the scene of Chae Nayun thanking me before. I didn't want this. I didn't want to ignore their danger anymore, even if the story would develop in an unpredictable direction. I firmly pointed out the real culprit. It was the leader of the academic club. But because he was very close to the first victim, he had already been investigated before and had an alibi. And I also gave my explanation for that. That was the truth. But everyone reacted to my statement. Most of them were still skeptical. Even Yoo Yeonha actually said that I kept suspecting someone who had an alibi under my disbelieving gaze. He actually suspected that I was a demon. I accidentally came into the novel world I wrote. Yet the character I once created with so much love was now doubting me for no reason. If revealing the truth would only lead to this outcome, would I still choose to step forward again? I sat in front of the computer, thinking about giving the protagonist a chaebol assistant. Violent in personality, yet not annoying. I smiled as I looked at the new character born beneath my hands. Yoo Yeonha. And now, he was questioning whether I was a demon. My feelings were extremely complicated. Kim Soo-ho pointed out my alibi, but Yoo Yeonha casually said that I was just randomly accusing someone like he was. Compared to before, my alibi seemed easier to fake in his eyes. For a moment, I didn't even know what to say. Then from behind me, a sudden noise rang out. Kim Hajin clenched his fists until they cracked loudly. He wanted to beat me up to test whether I was a demonkin. Looking at the protagonists around me enjoying the show, I sneered coldly at the threat still aimed at me. Then come at me, let's see if I won't blow a hole through your head. Kim Soo-ho stepped in to stop us. I calmly said to Kim Soo, if you suspect me, just ask Chae Nayun. That day, we were together at the hunting club. Before I could finish speaking, a basketball suddenly flew toward me. Shin Jung-hak glared at me viciously. Talking about Chae, Nayun had clearly made him unhappy. I mocked him coldly. Were you too busy playing those childish bullying games with your friends that you didn't even know Chae Nayun and I worked together to kill a demon? Shin Jung-hak stood up angrily, ready to attack. But the class president beside him held him back. No matter what, I had already explained the truth clearly. I couldn't be bothered dealing with these hopeless people anymore. I turned around and prepared to leave. But right then, Kim Horak suddenly rushed behind me. Without any warning, his massive fist came swinging toward me. At a critical moment, I dodged backward. The punch brushed past my head and slammed into the door. The door shattered into pieces instantly. Even the wall cracked from the shockwave. Even Shin Jung-hak, who had been furious moments ago, was stunned. Since coming here, I had never truly gotten this serious before. You still have some guts left in you. Be more careful in your next life. I'm definitely going to put a hole in you. As Kim Horak charged at me again, I immediately drew my gun to fire. Right then, a slash cut between us. Kim Soo-ho stepped in once more to stop the fight. At the same time, he also scolded Yoo Yeonha. If you're suspicious, why not just ask Chae Nayun directly? Yoo Yeonha contacted Chae Nayun. But what did that have to do with me anymore? Without looking back, I walked out of the room. Chae Nayun also proved that I couldn't possibly be the demonkin. The entire room fell silent. Fate. But my heart was no longer there anymore. I left the meeting room and arrived at an empty grassy field. I felt lost. What was I even doing? Was falling into my own novel not enough already? Now I even had to fight against the characters I created with love. I missed home. I missed the apartment whose lease still had a year left. Would people in reality think I had gone missing? How worried must my parents be if they couldn't find me? I clutched my head in pain. All this time, I had deliberately avoided thinking about these problems. But after this incident, the pain swallowed me like a giant wave. My current situation made me despair while barely seeing any hope. Willpower increased. I laughed bitterly. This system really has no sense of timing. But thanks to you, if it were the old me, even without the courage to commit suicide, I probably would have already given up on returning home. I wiped away my tears and looked at the distant horizon. Everything still had to continue. Inside the room, Yoo Yeonha also realized that Kim Horak had just used his talent. Yet, an ordinary marksman had actually dodged an attack enhanced by his talent. Yoo Yeonha still suspected me. At that moment, Yin Haeyoung suddenly sent him a message, asking to meet in the study room before tomorrow's gathering. In a pool of blood, Yin Haeyoung looked at Yoo Yeonha's reply message. A chilling smile appeared on his blood-covered face. I accidentally came into the novel world I wrote. Faced with protagonists who once doubted me, they were now seeking my help instead. Would you choose to forgive them? I suddenly understood why people try to stay busy when they're depressed. Because exhaustion would leave me no room left to think. But these people's gazes still bothered me a lot. I wasn't really angry though. Come to think of it, what exactly was I doing with these characters anyway? Right now, all I wanted was to return to my real home. At that moment, Chae Nayun returned to school. Shin Jung-hak and Kim Soo-ho hurried over to check on her condition. I saw all of this clearly. including Yoo Yeonha in front as well. He remained just as cold. Class began. The instructor informed us that after the midterm written exam, there would be a practical skills test. The practical exam would consist of 2 parts: duels with classmates, and battles against illusions summoned by magicians. I was even more worried about the former. The duel system uses nomination rights. You designate an opponent to duel with. At first glance, it looked completely like a point farming contest for the top-ranked students. To prevent that from happening, Cube established a compensation point system. That means even if the first-ranked student duels the last-ranked student and wins, they would only receive very few points. Of course, you could also ignore this mechanism. If you simply wanted to beat up someone you disliked, using your nomination right was still allowed. Besides that, there was another thing bothering me. Was Rachel sitting a little too close to me? Was she peeking at my notes? Seeing that, I seriously picked up my pen. I wrote down 2 names, leaving Rachel looking completely confused. Those were actually my parents' names. Meanwhile, Yoo Yeonha arrived at the study room as promised. Everything there was as charming as a blooming rose. At that moment, Yoo Yeonha noticed the incense bamboo placed on the table, but she did not think much of it. Yin Xiang casually asked about the demon investigation team. He asked who had been listed as suspects. Yoo Yeonha naturally told him about my so-called nonsense theory. Smiling mockingly, she said someone believed Yin Xiang was the demonized one, the one using mental magic to abduct students. Yin Xiang still looked calm. He casually asked whether there was any evidence. Yoo Yeonha immediately answered no. But the next moment, she suddenly realized that something fell off. Normally, innocent people would ask what the evidence was. Realizing her slip of the tongue, Yoo Yeonha quietly picked up her weapon. When innocent people are suspected, they ask whether there is evidence. Yoo Yeonha immediately became alert. But it was already too late. Yin Xiang stopped pretending. With a sinister smile, he said, it was supposed to be a long time before it was Cube's turn. The second-year dormitory grounds. Yoo Yeonha slowly opened her eyes. She realized she had already been tied to a chair. Quickly examining the surroundings, Yoo Yeonha guessed that she was imprisoned in the second-year dormitory area. The dormitory grounds. Only at this moment did she finally believe what I had said. Yoo Yeonha tried her best to stay calm. She wanted to call for help, no matter who it was. But just as she tried to free her hands, from behind her back, Yin Xiang silently appeared behind her. At that moment, a notification sound rang out. I received a message. It was actually from Yoo Yeonha. Confused, I opened it. The message contained only the number 9. I accidentally entered the novel world I created. Yet the main character was abducted by a demonized one. A sniper kill from 1,000 miles away. Times have changed, baby. Right after Yoo Yeonha secretly sent the message, Yin Xiang discovered it. He snatched away her communicator. Seeing that the message had been sent to the only person who previously suspected he was the demonized one, he coldly said that, if given the chance, he planned to eliminate me too. Yoo Yeonha angrily shouted threats at Yin Xiang, telling him the search team had already noticed him. But Yin Xiang did not care at all. After all, once this incident was completed, he planned to leave Cube anyway. At that moment, Yoo Yeonha's facial expression was somewhere between fear and anger. Meanwhile, I stared at the message, containing only the number 9. Suddenly, I realized it might be a distress signal. I hurriedly sat upright. Using Eye of Truth, I searched for Yoo Yeonha's location. At the same time, Yin Xiang continued attacking Yoo Yeonha. Alone and isolated Yoo Yeonha, especially in a situation like this, felt the loneliness even more intensely. But even so, Yoo Yeonha still gritted her teeth and endured. Seeing that the brainwashing was ineffective, Yin Xiang decided not to waste any more time. Lilith's magic wrapped around Yoo Yeonha like threads. just as Yin Shan prepared to forcibly brainwash her. A bullet struck perfectly on target. A hole instantly exploded through Yin Shan's head. He collapsed to the ground, screaming in pain. This specially modified bullet could not even be removed through surgery. Liu Yanghe was completely stunned, doubting others even after refusing to believe them. What kind of behavior is that? Hearing the sudden voice, Yin Xian roared, demanding to know who it was. Gone was his usual calm demeanor. He became like a mad dog, attacking everything around him indiscriminately. Another bullet fired. It struck Yin Xian with perfect accuracy again. He looked around in despair, searching for me. Yet he still had no idea where I was. I gently stroked the sniper rifle and told him that I was in a very, very distant place, as if pierced by 6 bullets in succession. Yin Xian finally collapsed. In a small patch of grass, thousands of miles away, a faint glint flashed. Behind the grass, I was lying prone with a massive sniper rifle. Through the scope, I watched Yin Xian, now unable to stand. There he was. Long-range sniping truly is the best way to kill from afar. I said softly, I've probably used up all my bullets today. If you have a conscience, prepare better bullets for me next time. Liu Yanghe watched Yin Shan still trying to struggle. I fired one final bullet straight through his waist. It was over. I put away the sniper rifle, looking at Liu Yanghe lying on the ground. After confirming that she was not injured, I said the rescue team would arrive soon. It was time for me to leave too. Finally relaxing, Liu Yanghe felt her eyelids grow heavy instantly. In a daze, this strong-willed girl seemed to whisper, "Thank you." I accidentally entered the novel world I created. A mysterious organization has appeared and targeted the protagonist. Knowing all this, how should I respond? After my long-distance intervention, Liu Yanghe was finally rescued. When she woke up again, she was already lying in a hospital bed. Looking at Kim Suho beside her, Liu Yanghe looked utterly confused. Seeing this, Kim Suho hurriedly explained. During the time Liu Yanghe was unconscious, Kim Suho and several students from Shin Chung-hak's group took turns watching over her. After all, they were part of the same investigation team. Seeing things develop this way, Kim Suho felt deeply guilty. Liu Yanghe also felt guilty for misunderstanding me before. When she learned that Shin Chung-hak had also come to look after her, her thoughts were instantly pulled back to him. Her face even turned slightly red. Meanwhile, as the great Yuan Seed, I received a message of thanks from Liu Yanghe. This time, I also gained quite a lot. Both my SP and luck stats increased, and my sharpshooter proficiency rose to level 7 as well. This was the most SP I had ever earned in a single mission. Although I invested a lot for the sniping operation, being able to save Liu Yanghe was worth it. After all, she was a character from my own novel. At that moment, Park Soo-hak rushed over after receiving my message. Unexpectedly, this guy thought I wanted to terminate our partnership. Without another word, he immediately dropped to the ground in despair, which startled me badly. I quickly took out the suitcase and explained to him that I wasn't ending our contract, but instead planned to increase my investment. The shares I had previously invested in Purple Smoke had now turned into a massive sum of 400 million won. Out of that, I invested 250 million into the stocks of Master of Domination. The remaining 150 million was all invested into SAS Agent. After all, I was certain his potential was worth it. When he learned such an enormous amount of money was being invested in him directly, Park Soo-hyuk was completely stunned. After I repeatedly persuaded him, he accepted the huge investment in a dazed and confused state. A little later, I took Park Soo-hyuk to play scratch-off lottery tickets on the island. After all, the luck stat I gained shouldn't go to waste. While Park Soo-hyuk was still confused, I scratched off a prize worth 20 million won in no time. It completely shattered Park Soo-hyuk's worldview. This was simply unbelievable. Were lottery tickets really this easy to win? Afterward, I directly handed the prize money to Woo Soo-ho. Holding all those enormous sums of money, Woo Soo-ho became extremely uneasy, afraid it might be stolen or robbed. At the same time, inside an abandoned factory, a strand of black smoke slowly condensed like a liquid shadow. A childlike black figure cheerfully shouted, "Captain, those guys have started moving. Master of Domination has also gone public. What should we do now?" A mysterious woman coldly replied, "Just take it by force. No need for anything else." Soon after, the two discussed my large purchase of Master of Domination stocks. The child casually opened purple smoke's interface and introduced to the mysterious woman a truth-seeking eye that could supposedly find anything. He asked the mysterious woman if she wanted to try it, perhaps to locate that person. The mysterious woman suddenly turned serious and immediately stopped the child from continuing. Next week, Cube's midterm exam would begin. The mysterious woman stated they only needed to focus on Kim Soo-ho and Shin Chung-hak, who ranked first and second. The others didn't matter. I'll personally go observe as well. I unexpectedly arrived in the world of my own novel. As the plot gradually changed, with the story headed in an uncontrollable direction, Cube's midterm exam was about to begin. Outside the arena, crowds filled the area. People from all over the world had gathered, as if attending a grand festival. To prevent demon infiltration, I released the drones I obtained from Suhak. They were already spread throughout Cube skies. Even if there were intruders, the chances of detecting them were very high. Just then, I accidentally bumped into a woman. I was about to apologize, but when I saw her face clearly, I was shocked. I almost forgot this person would come too, but after freezing for a moment, I ended up staring at her like some pervert for quite a while. Feeling awkward, I had to say something to make myself seem less suspicious. So I blurted out, "Hello, beautiful. You're stunningly beautiful." The woman's face instantly darkened. She turned around and walked away immediately. She clearly hadn't expected me to see through the cognitive interference barrier. At once, she ordered the child hidden in the shadows, Dren, to immediately investigate me. Right now, not only were there heroes entering Cube to recruit students, but members of the villain syndicate had come as well. Their objective was obviously to recruit Kim Soo or Shin Chung-hak. The villains infiltrating by themselves wouldn't cause major problems. But if the story changed unexpectedly, and they encountered the guardian heroes, then it wouldn't end with just 1 or 2 deaths. At the same time, the members of the mysterious organization all received news that we could ignore. The cognition blocking effect of Sharon's necklace. Because of this, they became even more interested in us. Meanwhile, Yoo Yeonha stopped me while I was heading to the arena. She brought me 100 rounds of top-grade bullets as a gift for saving her life. She even generously said that if I ran out, I could come to her any time for more ammunition. Could there be some hidden motive behind this? Afterward, Yoo Yeonha hoped I could provide evidence. Regarding the demon-related incident, I helplessly explained that the support sniping operation had to remain secret. If people discovered the number of shots I fired at Yin Xian, it would become troublesome in many ways. After all, Lilith's demons were extremely troublesome to deal with. Yoo Yeonha assumed I had some special reason for hiding my true strength. Out of goodwill, she warned me that passing the exam like this would be very difficult. Inside the student waiting room, a muscular man looked as though he was lifting several tons of weight. Roaring with all his strength, he muttered viciously, "I'll crush you completely." Kim Hajin? I unexpectedly arrived in the world of my own novel. And now I have to compete against the characters I created myself. In their showdown between a sniper and a tank, who will emerge victorious. In a remote wilderness area, Delon was reporting information to the captain. Unexpectedly, aside from the previous 300 million debt loan, there was almost no useful information at all. He was simply an ordinary person. Even a Jian would cry hearing this. Even the captain fell silent after hearing it. Just such an ordinary person. How could he possibly see through the cognitive barrier and notice them? At that moment, someone rustled out from the bushes. The person was Seven Junjin, a member of the Chameleon Troupe. This year, Cube's most outstanding students were all first years. The captain told Seven Junjin he could use this chance to verify things himself. Meanwhile, Chung Hajung's duel was about to begin. Inside the arena, only the heroes, Oh Jang-yuk and Seo Youngji, were leisurely eating snacks. While chatting, suddenly, Seo Youngji sensed an unfamiliar face across from them. That person seemed to be staring at them with bad intentions. This immediately put them on guard. The match officially began. The student ranked 19th, martial fighter Kim Horak, was the first to step onto the stage, and his opponent was me, ranked 934th. The battle was about to erupt. Kim Horak wore a murderous expression, as if he wanted to devour me alive. As for us, Kim Horak specialized in spreading magic power around his body, forming protective armor. It was basically like a thorn armor counterattack effect. Even training bullets would probably struggle to hurt him. As a marksman, I absolutely could not clash head-on with a tank like him. As the whistle blew, Kim Hao-run immediately launched a fierce charge straight at me. Seeing his clenched fist about to reach me, I instantly activated bullet time. This skill had improved quite a bit during this period of training. At the very least, for this 1 minute, I should have been able to keep up with Kim Horak's movements, but I was immediately proven wrong. His attack exploded with terrifying force, although I barely managed to dodge it. His immense strength directly shattered the floor, and the shockwave sent me flying. What kind of human tank is this? Facing his pursuit, I could only widen the distance. Then I seized an opportunity and fired a shot back at him. But the bullet seemed to stop, right in front of Kim Horak's protective aura. Just as he was feeling smug about it, the bullet suddenly changed direction and started spinning. It drilled straight into Kim Horak's shoulder. Bang! Kim Horak's protective armor shattered apart. The audience was completely stunned. Even Kim Horak himself couldn't understand how I managed to use an ordinary bullet to pierce through his defense. This bullet was created by combining Shin Hong's magical power with it. It possessed anti-demon properties and armor-piercing power. Immediately after, I rose again and shot Kim Horak in the thigh. Kim Horak was completely enraged. He clenched both fists and slammed them toward the ground. The tremendous force nearly uprooted the entire arena floor. I immediately leaped upward and casually threw a flying knife. Kim Horak thought the knife had some hidden mechanism too, so he hardly dodged it. In reality, the knife was only a feint. The moment he shifted left to evade, I raised my gun again and shot his shoulder. Kim Horak collapsed with a groan. The entire arena instantly fell silent. Then I slowly walked toward him with my gun raised. I unexpectedly arrived in the novel world I created. Yet I ended up attracting the attention of the beautiful villainess. For me, was this fortune or disaster? I gently stroked the trigger and pointed my gun at the figure lying on the ground, whose body was already riddled with wounds. Yet I still didn't pull the trigger for a long time. Everyone in the arena held their breath. Even the professional heroes couldn't help but exclaim aloud. Did he run out of bullets? Kim Horak shakily stood back up. On his once arrogant face appeared anger and unwillingness, though he still couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. At this point, the outcome of the match was already obvious. Let's enter here. I surrender, under the disbelieving gazes of the audience. The match ended with Kim Horak declared the winner. Winning in such a humiliating way made Kim Horak so furious he nearly exploded. Meanwhile, I jogged away from the arena. After the match, Seo Young-ji blamed Kim Horak's poor performance on carelessness and underestimating my abnormal mobility and reflexes. My performance exceeded everyone's expectations. Some people even suspected I had taken stimulants. Opinions about me became extremely divided. But one thing couldn't be denied. I had broken through defensive armor using pure gunsmanship. That fact alone made several powerful figures take notice of me. That included members of the Chameleon Troupe as well, but to them, I was merely a small side note. Their main targets were still Kim Soo-ho and Shin Jung-hook. Shin Jung-hak's overbearing marksmanship and Kim Soo-ho's swordsmanship, as graceful and sharp as a sword dance, were closely observed by the Chameleon Troupe. Still, they felt Kim Soo-ho was hiding something unknown. Besides the two protagonists, the troupe also seemed to request that Jenjin write a report about me as well. For some reason, I had gained more hostility again. Just then, while Jenjin was reporting the situation, he was spotted by a patrolling officer. The moment he was discovered, murderous intent spread across his face. Before the officer could even react, Jenjin's hand had already reached him. The officer's head exploded into pieces instantly. After killing someone, Jinjin actually felt a bit better. Meanwhile, the leader of the Chameleon Troupe inside Cube listened to the report, while his thoughts gradually drifted away. It seemed he also had another objective. He wanted to find the traitor and avenge someone named Yaren. His thoughts returned to the present. As for me, who possessed anti-demon abilities, I had surprisingly been listed as his #1 investigation target. Both main protagonists started backing off a little. They were even planning to come see me personally tomorrow. How would all of this develop from here? I unexpectedly arrived in the world of the novel I wrote myself. I kindly encouraged the protagonist who had lost the competition, pointing out a new path for her. Yet, I still got scolded. Being an author really is difficult. On the second day of the midterm exams, today was also the final round of this tournament. Many members of powerful guilds had also come to watch these cube geniuses compete. The first match today was Chae Nayun versus Rachel. Thanks to the lovely extras for the commentary, I basically spoiled everything. Today's match would end in Chae Nayun's miserable defeat. Trying to defeat Rachel head-on was impossible. The match officially began amid the heated atmosphere. Chae Nayun made the first move. A piercing arrow shot forth, raining down toward Rachel like heavenly blossoms, scattering. Her combo attacks looked fierce, but they dealt absolutely no damage. Just as the match was reaching its climax, a long-haired beauty came over to me. The leader of the Weiss mercenary group, a wanted criminal on the Hero Association blacklist. In this world, only I knew her real name. As I stared blankly at this icy beauty, a cup of iced cola suddenly spilled over her head. Everyone instantly froze. Damn, this is a huge problem. After wiping herself dry with tissues, the beautiful villainess thanked me, though her face remained as cold as ever. She got straight to the point and said that she had watched my match against Kim Hajin and was interested in my abilities. At the same time, she handed me her contact information. 30-year hero, Lee Shan. As the author, I could tell at a glance that this was not her true intention. It was just an excuse. Private contact beforehand was against the rules. This woman was actually planning to snatch the card back. What a stubborn personality. Meanwhile, the fierce battle on stage continued. After the ice-cold beauty finished speaking, she turned around and left. But right now, she had no reason to come looking for me personally. So what exactly was her purpose? Just as I was thinking about it, Kim Soo-ho won exactly as expected. And just like in the novel's original plot, Chae Nayun lost the match. I retrieved the surveillance drone and was about to head back to the dorm to review the footage. Right at that moment, a strange sound suddenly reached my ears. Good grief. Chae Nayun was hiding alone in the bushes crying. What kind of elementary school behavior is this? But this plot development, if I remember correctly, this should have been the scene where Kim Soo-ho comforted Chae Nayun, using that as a turning point. Chae Nayun gradually developed feelings for Kim Soo-ho. But in my opinion, fake words of comfort were completely useless. Compared to struggling endlessly, giving up could also be a correct choice. But Kim Soo-ho's dictionary didn't contain the word give up. Perhaps Chae Nayun would never give up because of Kim Soo-ho either. At that moment, I suddenly came up with an idea. Ding! Chae Nayun's communication watch rang. I sent her a message, strongly suggesting she change her weapon. Abandon the longbow, be like me, never bend at the waist. Looking at my message, Chae Nayun's entire mood changed. And just then, Kim Soo-ho arrived, only to find Chae Nayun already cheered up by me. Thus, the first semester midterm dual exam came to an end. How gratifying. Truly gratifying. I unexpectedly entered the world of the novel I wrote. In this jointly revised version of the novel, any character could appear as a villain. Everything had become uncertain. Back in the dormitory, I stared in shock at the footage captured by the drone during the exam. Was this murderous-looking guy also a member of the Weiss group? As far as I remembered, there seemed to be no such character in the novel. Killing people without restraint, simply for personal pleasure, even criminals, possess powers that surpassed ordinary human limits, just like heroes. In this world, the only ones capable of such acts were villains. It seemed that in this jointly revised novel, which characters would appear as villains had become completely uncertain at the monster battle examination arena. The instructor was explaining the details of this test. Inside this examination field, students would fight against summoned phantom beasts created by mages. They would engage them in combat. This exam was different from ordinary training. The phantom beasts possessed the same aggression as real monsters. Even if the mage cancelled the summoning, they would not disappear immediately. So this examination was extremely dangerous as well. The test officially began with groups of 4 students. The remaining students had to watch carefully and make detailed observations. As the mage cast a summoning spell, in front of Kim Horak, a gigantic phantom beast suddenly appeared. The high-level phantom beast launched the first attack. Its overwhelming strength made it hard for Kwang-yo to resist. He was suddenly sent flying backward. The battle ended quickly, leaving the watching students stunned. When it was Chae Nayun's turn afterward, she went through countless hardships before finally winning with a single devastating arrow attack. The students who took the exam afterward all displayed different levels of performance. Next, it was finally my turn. In front of me appeared a phantom beast resembling a werewolf. Strike first to gain the advantage. I immediately fired a shot at it, then quickly hid behind cover. Shoot once, move once. At this rate, I should clear the exam smoothly soon. Right at that moment, the entire examination arena suddenly shook violently. Everyone was confused about what was happening. What on earth is going on? Meanwhile, elsewhere, guard hero Woo Jung-yuk received a message from SEO Youngji in the monitoring room. Jung-won was somewhere in the sea area near Woo Jung-yuk's location, beneath the water, but they still had not determined the exact position. At the same time, A series of footsteps came from behind Woo Jung-yuk. The person who arrived was none other than Chae Jun-chung of the Weiss. Carrying an overwhelming aura, Chae Jung-kyung approached, while complaining that Woo Jung-yuk was being overly stubborn. He slowly walked toward him. Seeing this, Woo Jung-yuk immediately told him to leave the area at once. The atmosphere between the two instantly became tense. At that moment, violent tremors also erupted along the beach. The ocean surface churned like raging storm waves. A gigantic monster suddenly rose up. Meanwhile, the shaking inside the examination arena grew even stronger. The exam was forced to stop. The teachers hurriedly evacuated the students outside. Damn it, what exactly is happening? Outside the arena, however, someone seemed to be waiting for something. I unexpectedly arrived in the world of the novel I wrote myself, and the story had begun to change. An important character from the novel encountered a major crisis. I aimed my shotgun at the assassin and fired without hesitation. In an instant, a dazzling light burst forth. The white glow illuminated everything around us. This attack alone consumed 250 SP points. The assassin was eliminated instantly. Rachel stared blankly at the shattered wall beside her. Clearly, she had never expected my bullets to be capable of damaging the reinforced walls of the arena. I looked at Rachel's body. She was covered in wounds, bleeding to a rather worrying extent. I should have been concerned about her safety, but, for some reason, the first thing I thought of was Evangel's seed. Rachel's blood would be the perfect nourishment for it. I quickly took out bandages to wipe away her blood and dress her wounds. Looking at the blood-soaked gauze in my hand, I was filled with excitement. At last, I had obtained the blood of a cube ranker. Rachel looked at me as if I were an idiot, frightening me into quickly hiding the gauze away. Right then, a shout rang out nearby. Seeing the exam supervisors rushing over, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. After learning that both of us were seriously injured, the teachers looked utterly confused. Who exactly did this? Meanwhile, facing the clear sea breeze, Woo Jung-yuk sat cross-legged on the beach. He was still trying to process what he had just witnessed. A flaming serpent had leaped out from the sea. But the arriving Seo Youngji interrupted his thoughts. Woo Jung-yuk helplessly told Seo Youngji that although the flaming serpent had been driven away, the person who chased the monster off was not him. Instead, it was the intruder who had killed a police officer. That person had driven the flaming serpent away using pure force alone. Such overwhelming power left Woo Jung-yuk deeply unsettled. The mysterious intruder of unknown identity, along with the appearance of a high-ranking monster. What kind of conspiracy was hidden behind all this? This incident quickly spread across the entire world. Cube had no choice but to deploy a large number of personnel to clarify the truth to the public and assist with repairs. After the incident, exams and classes were cancelled one after another. The students also received an unprecedented 10-day vacation. The students who heard the news were overjoyed. Just then, my computer received a message that the end co-author was only now notifying me about the setting changes. Lancaster, his settings had been modified into a far more dangerous character. His potential had been raised to 85, which also meant that an extremely dangerous villain had appeared. He was even stronger than in the original story. Damn it, the plot was drifting further and further out of my control. Suddenly, someone's elbow slammed into my head, interrupting my thoughts. I turned around to look. It was Chae Nayun. With a fierce expression, she demanded to know what I was staring at. Hey, what was this little brat thinking now? After seeing me at a loss for words, Chae Nayun returned home looking thoroughly satisfied. At the same time, she received the report from the previous exam. Chae Nayun, read Kim Soo-ho's sincere and fair evaluation of her. For some reason, she felt deeply moved. She murmured to herself, "No matter what others say, I still like using a bow." Afterward, she looked at another evaluation. It was anonymous and surprisingly long. Chae Nayun happily organized her emotions and began reading it. The next moment, her expression gradually darkened. Then a furious roar, like a volcanic eruption, echoed through the sky. Guess which unlucky bastard caused this again? A tiny little seed could actually grow into a lowly witch girl. Can you believe that? If I hadn't written that setting myself, I wouldn't believe it either. Carefully, I placed the seed obtained from Mount Gar onto the gauze that had absorbed the blood. According to the novel's settings, if the seed was fed human blood, the witch even thou would be born. Since it was Rachel's blood alone, it probably wouldn't create some villain, right? I gently poked the seed with my finger, hoping it would sprout as soon as possible and become my assistant. Right then, a sudden wave of pain shot through my arm. I quickly rolled up my sleeve to look at it. Dang it. Why did the second scar appear at a time like this? The next day, after a whole night of struggling against the pain, I felt completely exhausted. Park Soo-yuk, who was heading to the hunting ground with me, thought I had spent the previous night doing something indecent. When we arrived at the entrance of the hunting ground, a large group of people had gathered there, blocking the way. These people were members of the Sea Gorge Guild. Yoo Yeonha was among them as well, while I was still wondering why they had gathered there. Suddenly, Yoo Yeonha noticed me looking in their direction and walked over. She asked what I was doing at the hunting ground. I helplessly replied, "Of course I'm here to make money." Then, I introduced my social agent manager, Park Soo-ho. Yoo Yeonha also seemed quite curious. She stared at Park Soo-ho like a venomous snake eyeing a mouse. According to the novel's original plot, Park Soo-ho was originally supposed to become Kim Soo-ho's manager. Later, he received investment from Yoo Yeonha. The results were extremely successful as well. Both Yoo Yeonha and Park Soo-ho walked the road to wealth together. But that was only in the original story. Without Kim Soo-ho by his side, would Park Soo-ho still have investment value to Yoo Yeonha? Did I ruin Park Soo-ho's future? While I was still lost in thought, Yoo Yeonha suddenly got into the car. She wanted to come hunting with me. I could only agree helplessly. What exactly was this girl trying to do? At that moment, Yoo Yeonha suddenly asked about my plans after graduation. Then she invited me to join her family's guild after graduating. From high-grade weapons to famous agents, they could provide extensive support in every aspect. For an ordinary student, that was more than tempting enough. Before I could seriously think about the matter any further, we arrived at the monster zone that was our destination. Clearly, Yoo Yeonha had not expected that an ordinary agent could locate such a monster spot, especially one selected specifically for the strengths of a marksman like me. All of this information had been gathered through field investigations. Looking at the stunned Yoo Yeonha, I smiled and told her my manager was quite impressive. After saying that, I walked away proudly. After getting out of the car, Yoo Yeonha knocked on Park Soo-ho's window. Then she asked him for a business card. Could this girl be trying to poach him from me? The failing student suddenly transformed into a top student. As the author of the novel, I had actually stolen the protagonist's spotlight. Looking at the previous exam results, I naturally ranked first place. But I did not care too much about that. More important than that was the fact that after I taught Kim Hajin a lesson during the skill exam, those people who used to bully me had become much quieter. I was enjoying the peace as well, but clearly I had thought too much. At that moment, a fist suddenly slammed over. It struck the wall beside me. Chae Nayun angrily questioned me. That long-winded. The valuation report full of sarcastic remarks. Was it written by me? I helplessly explained to her that it was all for her own good. Hearing that, Chae Nayun became even more displeased. After arguing for a while, we made a bet. As long as I could beat her in archery, she would give up using a bow from then on. Already heated up with anger, she agreed without hesitation. I was actually quite confident about this bet. Right now, my gunslinger talent proficiency was at 7%. As long as I improved it by another 6% in the remaining time, beating her would be inevitable. Chae Nayun was simply running away from reality. She mistakenly believed that bows could still rival guns. I also wanted to say kinder words to her, but I hoped she could become stronger. Inside the travel club hall, Club President Yoo Yeonha was announcing the destination of this trip. It was none other than the romantic country of France. The current developments was still generally following the original plotline. That meant the next event would be the assassination incident of the Paris tycoon. This incident began with an assassin organization sending out a murder notice. The recipient was a wealthy French magnate. Bourgle appeared to be a gentle person who lived a simple life in a suburban mansion. But from birth, he had been a fraudster. He was a villain who accumulated wealth by deceiving countless people. Although he had hidden it well all this time, the police obtained crucial evidence against him. As a result, he became wanted by the authorities. Due to lack of time, he failed to hire powerful bodyguards. To protect himself, Bourgle lived in fear every single day. Until, during a banquet, he kidnapped Yoo Yeonha, the leader of Cube's travel club. That was when he came up with a brilliant idea. Every month, he would invite traveling students to stay at his estate. In reality, he was using those students as human shields. Just then, a notification sound pulled my thoughts back. The truth behind the Purple Smoke Society office had received a request for a commission. It was the first commission I had ever received. I quickly opened it to check. This commission was to find a scammer who had extorted money and escaped. And surprisingly, that scammer was actually him. Meanwhile, the members of the Weiss group were watching footage of my previous battle. My demon-slaying abilities had also attracted their attention. The leader of the group intended to recruit me as well. After a round of voting, most of the members agreed to it. The Weiss group assigned positions based on colors. If I agreed to join them, I would be assigned the black position. And previously, the holder of that position was the so-called traitor they kept talking about. What kind of twisted fate could bring together two people who clearly disliked each other? Inside Cube, Travel Club President Yoo Yeonha was arranging the members into groups through a lottery draw. Once the groups were confirmed, they could enter the portal. Even in real life, I had never been to Europe before. I never expected that here I could arrive in just 10 seconds. As for the lottery draw, I just let fate decide. In the center of a French town, I must have had terrible luck, because I ended up in the same group as Chae Nayun. The girl also looked extremely unwilling, as if she wanted to devour me alive. Things on our side were practically about to explode. Yet Yoo Yeonha suddenly started showing affection with his foreign girlfriend. Did this guy arrange the France trip just so he could see his girlfriend? Since we were already here, the next part was free activity time for each group. In such an unfamiliar place, Chae Nayun seemed somewhat lost, so I told her to follow me. A short while later, we arrived at a restaurant. Chae Nayun was very curious about how I managed to reserve such a restaurant so quickly. Of course, I couldn't tell her the truth. My book of truth can learn most things in this world. Just as we were ordering food, I suddenly saw a familiar figure. I told Chae Nayun to wait there, then hurriedly chased after him. It really was him. What the hell is going on? Did the story get changed again? Why is Yoo Yeonha here? I quickly called out to her, but Yoo Yeonha looked extremely flustered, repeatedly saying that she didn't know me. That startled me. Why was she pretending not to know me? Right at that moment, a system notification sounded. I seemed to understand something. I hurriedly apologized, saying I mistook her for someone else. Then I went somewhere isolated and opened my laptop. Sure enough, the settings had changed. An anonymous informant had reignited the fate between Jan and Yoo Yeonha would appear in the related world line. The two of them once participated together in the Creators Grace Guild as fellow members who joined at the same time. They often carried out missions together and experienced many incidents. Because of that, they formed a deep friendship. But at the most crucial moment, Jan betrayed Yoo Yeonha. Jan's true identity was the yellow-ranked member of the Chameleon Troupe. He was a villain with abilities related to theft and disguise. Meanwhile, Yoo Yeonha seemed to be deep in thought. Her assistant Yorin questioned the authenticity of the anonymous tip. He asked Yoo Yeonha whether Jan would really appear at the party. Obviously, Yoo Yeonha did not completely trust the informant, but she knew very well that Jan loved parties like this. And if there was something he could conveniently steal, that would make it even better for him. The relic stored in the ballroom safe. The Homeros Ring. Tonight, Jan seemed intent on stealing it. A young man and woman booked a hotel together. After eating and drinking their fill, what should they do next? But I directly suggested to Chae Nayun that we split up here. We would each explore on our own. After all, the ball would start at 5 p.m. I had to scout the surrounding area beforehand, and women would only slow down my draw speed. Seeing this, Chae Nayun waved her hand unhappily and stormed off. That evening, inside an ancient castle, many elite nobles and socialites gathered there. Among them, a handsome young couple attracted everyone's attention. Those two were Kim Suho and Yoo Yeonha. Yoo Yeonha seemed delighted by all the attention she was receiving. Meanwhile, outside the lively and cheerful venue, a lone figure stood in the cold wind, observing the hall. I activated my clairvoyance and watched the venue closely, confirming that Yoo Yeonha had also arrived. So far, nothing unexpected had happened. Today, my only objective here was to ensure the story progressed smoothly. At that moment, a surge of energy interrupted me. In the bushes, not far away, a magical portal suddenly appeared. Damn it, I knew things wouldn't go this smoothly. Someone capable of casually creating a portal like that could only be a demon human, and probably a powerful demon human, favored by demons themselves. Only such a being would possess enough magic power to open a portal. At this very moment, they might already be hiding somewhere inside the venue. Just then, a notification sounded in my ear. My computer suddenly received a message. In the original story, although the Homeros Ring was a myth-grade relic, it drew little attention because it had not yet awakened. That assumption, however, was deemed incorrect. Therefore, the setting was changed. The Demon Society would intervene in this incident. Seeing that made me shiver involuntarily. The Demon Society, led by the ruthless demon human Kim Hajin, had appeared in relic wars around the world. Terrorist attacks, and even wars themselves. And now they dragged such dangerous people into this too. That damn co-author. I immediately released Aether, covering my face with it. This time, I would no longer follow your script. Next, I had to find out where Jan was. Meanwhile, several waiters in a corner were instantly knocked unconscious. A figure slowly walked into the security room containing the Homeros Ring. The Homeros Ring was right before his eyes. Just as he reached out to grab it, the sound of footsteps interrupted him. Yoon slowly approached him. She softly called out, "You're in?" Yoon looked somewhat flustered, but Yoon seemed to have already seen through everything. She slowly approached Yoren and embraced him, then coldly said, "I will never be deceived by you a second time." After saying that, she grabbed Yoren and viciously slammed him away. Immediately afterward, a deafening explosion echoed through the venue. A figure burst out through the smoke. Yoren's original appearance slowly began to change. This person was the yellow-ranked member of the Chameleon Troupe. Yoon rushed straight at Jan with a sword in hand. She shouted furiously, "Do you think I can't recognize the person closest to me?" Jan merely let out a light chuckle. "My betrayal must have hurt you deeply, huh?" Yoon anger instantly ignited. A fierce battle was about to erupt. Right at that moment, a long whip came lashing toward them. Who would have thought that former friends would now become enemies standing against each other? Yoon climbed onto Jan's body and was about to strike him with her sword when suddenly a whip flew toward them. It bound his hand. Both Yoon and Jian turned toward the direction the whip came from. They looked toward where it had struck from. A masked girl was standing there. It was Yoo Yeonha. Yoo Yeonha added more force to the whip. She casually told Yoon to put down his weapon. Her whip seemed to be trying to snatch away Yoon sword. The enraged Yoon immediately released his power. The connected whip was instantly burned into ashes. This sudden turn of events caused the bewildered Yoo Yeonha to step back several times. Just then, Jian seized the opening in Yoon defense and thrust his sword toward him at high speed. Yoon was completely enraged. The battle erupted instantly every time his sword clashed with Jian's dagger. Lightning crackled loudly, and flames ignited everywhere. Jian could only do his best to block Yoon demonic attacks, but a dagger user was ultimately no match for a swordsman. As time passed, he was forced into a corner. In the end, he could no longer withstand his opponent's assault. Just as Yoon prepared for the final strike, a flash of light sliced through the air and cut in between Jian and Yoon. Kim Soo-ho's sword blocked Yoon attack. After being interrupted again and again, Yoon roared telling them to get out of the way. But Kim Soo did not back down from Yoon Sung-hwa's warning. He wanted to become a hero who protected people. Clearly, his firm conviction could not be shaken so easily. At this moment, half of Yoon Sung's face was covered by a mask, and the same was true for Kim Soo. As a result, they could not recognize each other. But the current Yoon Sung-ha knew nothing of mercy. He kicked Kim Soo-ho away without hesitation. But when he turned back around, Jian had already reached the window and was trying to escape through it. However, just as he was about to leave, a thick black mist suddenly appeared. The darkness swallowed the fleeing Jian and pushed him back inside. The entire room was dyed black and red. The furious Yoon Sung-ga, the struggling Jian, and even the gloomy Yoo Yeonha all held their breath while staring into the darkness. Then, a figure slowly emerged from the darkness. In his hand was clearly The Homeros Ring. Damn it, this just became troublesome. Meanwhile, Chae Nayun stood blankly in front of the hotel where they had lunch earlier. After wandering around angrily for hours, she had somehow returned to the starting point again. She then prepared to check the map on her smartwatch. Unexpectedly, a notification popped up, and getting lost will always accompany you. Meanwhile, inside the venue, everyone watched the demon emerging from the darkness raise the ring. Yoon Sunga immediately released powerful magic energy, aiming directly at the demon. The demon sneered disdainfully. This ring will now belong to our evil society. Watching all of this unfold, I could only sigh helplessly. Now that the ring had fallen into the demon's hands, whether it was Yoon Sunga or Kim Soo, their chances of retrieving it were slim. Looks like I'll have to take action myself. I compressed part of my ether onto my hand and wove it into a rope. Then I poured 80% of my magic power into my right arm. After that, I hurled the rope with all my strength. In an instant, the rope pierced through the window and hooked onto the ring. I immediately pulled the rope back. While the demon was still confused, Yoon Sunga's attack had already reached him. That also diverted Yoon Sunga's attention. For the moment, they wouldn't come after me. I looked at the ring in my hand and smiled in satisfaction, but my smile quickly disappeared. A fierce attack suddenly rushed toward me. Damn it, was there a second demon too? I was unexpectedly trapped inside the novel world I had written myself. I never expected that at the brink of death, it would feel like I had returned to that familiar place again. What the hell is going on? Just as I obtained the Homeros Ring and was preparing to leave, someone suddenly descended from the sky in front of me. It was a demon who looked as handsome as Hajin. He blocked the path in front of me. He was radiating killing intent and held a bladeless light sword in his hand. I knew exactly what it was. It was a weapon created using the most advanced magical engineering technology. The demon wielding the magic sword, Sidi, slowly walked toward me. He let out a cold laugh and demanded that I hand over the ring. But obviously, that was impossible. Before I could answer, he drew his magic sword. He infused the sword with magic power. And just like a lightsaber, a blade of magical energy shot out from the hilt. With a single swing, he unleashed enormous magic power straight toward me. A deep trench was carved into the floor. I could only desperately dodge. This is terrible. At this rate, this won't work. If only I could do something about that sword. No matter how much I thought, his attacks kept coming at me one after another. After dodging wave after wave of attacks, I shouted for him to stop. I said I wanted to negotiate with him. I could hand over the ring directly. But in his eyes, someone like me had absolutely no room to negotiate. The demon sneered coldly, tightened his grip on the magic-infused sword, and charged straight at me. Just as he thought victory was assured, the blade suddenly flickered and then disappeared completely. What? Confused, he poured more magic power into it again, but nothing changed. Like a light bulb that had run out of energy, the magical blade flickered and vanished. I instantly realized what had happened. Bursting into loud laughter, I switched the Desert Eagle into shotgun mode. The demon panicked and swung his sword around aimlessly. But even the most advanced weapon could not repair itself just by being swung around. Well, look at that. That weapon's useless today. I gathered the last bit of my remaining magic power and converted it into light element magic. This white magic power flowed into the shell of the shotgun. Spirit annihilation. Luckily for me, on the other side, Chae Nayun sat on a bench near the travel club gathering place. It was already 7 p.m. She had long since given up searching for the masquerade ball and was playing games to pass the time. Just then, the constant ringing sound made it impossible for her to focus on the game. Chae Nayun turned to look beside her. I appeared before her with a pale face, covered in sweat, leaving her completely flustered. At that moment, I could no longer hold on. I slowly closed my eyes and collapsed onto the park bench. At that moment, I seemed to truly see that familiar place again. Along with those familiar people, my mom and dad. Seeing the parents I missed day and night, feeling that long-lost warmth. At that moment, my tears could no longer be held back. When I opened my eyes again, I seemed to be lying in a place that was both familiar and unfamiliar. Where is this? I thought I could finally see my long-lost parents again when I saw those familiar figures. My eyes couldn't help but tear up, but I never expected it was all just a dream. The arrival of Chae Nayun and the others broke the oppressive atmosphere in the room. From them, I learned that I was currently inside a mansion where an assassination incident was about to occur. Looks like the little prelude to the assassination incident was about to begin. Luckily, I woke up before it happened. At that moment, Kim Soo-ho pulled me back to reality and asked why I had suddenly lost consciousness. I casually made up an excuse to brush it off, then opened my to check the news. Perhaps because students from Cube Academy were involved. The incident of the demon invasion spread very quickly. The unbelievable incident seemed to have ended safely, because in the report, there was no mention of him at all. Thinking back to when Kim Soo-ho stopped Yoo Yeonha, he had already provoked murderous intent. If not for the demon, he would have already been seriously injured. I knew he was a good person, and I understood his actions. But could a simple sense of justice really overcome all the trouble caused by the mastermind behind the scenes? This made me begin doubting whether Kim Soo could truly bring me back to the real world. A faint smile appeared on Kim Soo-ho's lips. If I'm the protagonist, aren't you one too? It would be more accurate to say everyone is the protagonist. That statement surprised me a little. As expected of a kind-hearted hero. Afterward, Kim Soo-ho brought up my evaluation of Chae Nayun, saying my judgment was too harsh. He believed that Chae Nayun had chosen this path herself, and others shouldn't force her to give it up. I argued back. If you know this path leads to failure, why encourage her? What if all her hard work ends in failure? Will you take responsibility for that? Kim Soo-ho asked me in return, how are you so sure Chae Nayun isn't suited for archery? When you told her to give up, could you take responsibility for that? I looked at him firmly and said that I had observed Chae Nayun longer than anyone else had. So I knew perfectly well which path suited her best. Kim Soo-ho was startled by this sudden confession. Before he could ask what I meant, a voice interrupted us. I activated my heavenly eye and looked. It was clearly Chae Nayun using an invisibility skill. She hurriedly left. Not long after, Chae Nayun ran back to the dormitory. Yoo Yeonha was awakened by my voice. Her face was flushed red, and my words left her feeling dizzy. "The awakened you. Yeonha told us to keep it down. It's late already. Go to sleep quickly." Chae Nayun hurriedly apologized and said she would sleep. But when she thought about what I had said, that I had observed her longer than anyone else, she found herself unable to fall asleep. Just then, a sharp scream suddenly shattered the silence. A hand stretched out from behind Chae Nayun. Yoo Yeonha was awakened again, and angrily shouted for them to be quiet. Chae Nayun's face darkened as she quickly denied it. Only then did the two realize something was wrong. So who exactly was screaming? Meanwhile, in another room, a maid stared at the bed in horror. On the bed lay a wealthy man, covered in blood. Badel? A scream suddenly echoed through the silent castle, shuddering the quiet night. While everyone was still confused, Kim Soo-ho quickly vaulted over the railing and rushed toward the source of the scream. When Kim Soo-ho pushed open the door, he was shocked by what he saw. A woman had collapsed onto the floor, while Bedell lay motionless on the bed. Soon, everyone else arrived. Natasha, who was a doctor, examined Bedell, then announced his death to everyone. The room instantly fell silent. I, who had been silently watching everything from behind, turned on the light. The dim room was instantly illuminated. This action seemed to confuse Natasha greatly, as she questioned why I had turned on the light. But I ignored her and walked straight toward Bedell's bedside. I began examining Bedell. At that moment, Natasha could no longer stay calm. She shouted at me not to destroy the scene and told me to get out immediately. I quickly pulled out my handgun and pressed it against Natasha's chin. I knew Bedell was not dead. He wanted to fake his death, to create the illusion that he had died. Then he would rely on the demons and become the greatest dark mage. Back when I created the characters in this story, I casually created the character Bedell, so I couldn't be sure what would happen later. Only by capturing Bedell now could this situation be handled properly. Originally, I was worried that I wasn't the protagonist of the story. If I interfered, the main storyline might collapse, which would bring uncertainty to the future. But Kim Soo-ho's words made me think deeply. We are all the protagonists of our own stories. We just need to follow our hearts. Even if there is uncertainty, I believe Kim Soo-ho will handle things properly. So I had to step forward and stop the villain from escaping. Facing everyone's confusion, I directly exposed Natasha's lie on the spot. My words shocked Natasha. What nonsense are you talking about? Are you questioning my ability as a doctor? In response to Natasha's words, I pointed out several things. First, Bedell's wound was too shallow. It couldn't possibly cause death. And with such a shallow wound, how could there be so much blood? There was also the final decisive evidence. I immediately opened my and showed everyone a wanted criminal's photo. Everyone looked utterly shocked. The wanted criminal's appearance looked extremely similar to Bedell. Seeing the evidence, Natasha's face darkened. She couldn't refute it. She could only change the subject. She told the butler to call the police and an ambulance first, and said they would discuss the rest later. Then she told everyone that before the police arrived, the matter should be temporarily set aside. Just then, a thought suddenly crossed my mind. I raised the gun in my hand and aimed it at Bedell. This action made Natasha panic and scream. What are you doing? I coldly told Natasha. I'll shoot after I count to 3. Anyway, Mr. Bedell is already dead, so this shouldn't matter. Natasha panicked. She begged everyone to stop me, but I ignored them and kept counting. When I reached 1 and was about to shoot, Natasha screamed and threw herself onto Bedell, shouting for me not to shoot. She admitted that Bedell was actually her father. The students around us were too stunned to speak. At that moment, the butler, who had been standing in the corner, sensed something was wrong and prepared to run away. A bullet grazed past the butler's shoulder. I pointed the handgun at him and coldly said there was no need to call the police anymore. Call the heroes instead. Tell the heroes, we've captured a wanted criminal. I picked up an unbelievably powerful weapon, but I don't know how to use it. Who should I ask for help? Natasha and Bedell were arrested by the police. But how did I uncover the truth behind all this? Now let me explain my analysis. Bedell carried the identity of a globally wanted criminal. So in order to escape legal punishment, he risked everything to create this plan. His daughter Natasha was one of the participants as well. To achieve a fake death state, a special medicine was needed, although ordinary people couldn't obtain it. Natasha, being a doctor, could easily get her hands on it. Next, they found an illegal magician who created fake wounds on Bedell's body. Then Natasha splattered blood around the scene, and thus the fake death was complete. After that, they simply needed a doctor to examine him, but faced with such a sophisticated fake death setup, No doctor could truly tell the difference. Even the police had been bribed. So, they planned to replace him with a prepared look-alike corpse. That way Bedell could disappear easily. From the authorities' perspective, if the Cube Academy students testified after witnessing it, the credibility would increase greatly. Thus, the escaped Bedell would welcome a brand new life of his own. But I destroyed all of that. At that moment, I was reading information on the news station. While I was immersed in it, a pleasant voice suddenly came from behind me. I turned around and looked. It was Yoo Yeonha. She praised my detective skills and asked how I identified the criminal's appearance. I simply replied calmly, "That's a family matter." But when family was mentioned, I suddenly wondered how Kim Chun-dung's family situation was going. A woman with octopus-like arms knelt before the boss. She reported the reason their plan had failed. It was because someone wearing a leopard mask had disrupted everything. Before she could finish, the boss interrupted her. He wanted to know whether that person was a demon. The octopus woman said he wasn't a demon, but he wasn't a hero either. The boss warned her not to act recklessly again. At that very moment, the boss suddenly let out a furious roar. He harshly scolded the octopus woman, asking why she had claimed to be a demon. The octopus woman trembled under the boss's furious gaze and stuttered an apology to him. The boss soon calmed down again. Then he assigned the octopus woman a mission. She had to find the man with the leopard mask as quickly as possible. Afterward, he asked about the whereabouts of the magic sword. What I didn't know was that the magic sword was currently in my hands as I played with it. Even after obtaining such an insanely powerful weapon, I still had no idea how to use it. If it required magical power to activate, then that was exactly my weakness, because I had no magic power at all. Of course, the thought of selling it crossed my mind again, but I was afraid it would bring trouble, so I decided not to study it for the time being. Next, my gaze shifted toward a ring. The Homeros Ring. It required magical power to activate. At least, that was true for other people, but for me, I only needed to use my fingers to type on the keyboard and modify it. After the modification was complete, it instantly emitted a golden light. I stared at it in my hand, and I could feel its attributes. It could increase my intelligence. My talent ability had improved. Now, how should I use this ring? What does it feel like to wear thin clothes? In a world of ice and snow, the moment I put on the ring and enhanced my talent, I felt like I was about to break through my limits. Just as I was slowly savoring the feeling, I suddenly thought of something. I needed to investigate Kim Chun-dung's family background. After all, everyone has a past. Besides, the Kim Chun-dung I wrote about was still a Cube Academy student. In today's terms, he would be considered a top student, so he should have an impressive background. In my mind, I had already found a suitable expert in tracking people down. That person was Zhang He. He was practically a godlike figure. Of course, the fees he charged were outrageously high. But after finding such an incredible person, I laughed like crazy. But the next moment, I felt like crying. Because I had spent all my money on investments recently. I was completely broke. Just as I was thinking of a solution, a cone-shaped egg beside me started shaking wildly. I knew it was hungry. I was standing there quietly, when suddenly I was hit by a snowball. I turned around to look, and saw Chae Nayun laughing at me with her hand raised. At that moment, the girl with bangs called us to gather. She explained the rules of a game to us. We had to search for flags with numbers on them. Each number represented a different reward. First came the drawing lot stage, which would determine our teammates. But after the draw, I wanted to cry, because I ended up on the same team as Chae Nayun again. She walked ahead of me with light little steps. Having already seen through everything, I warned her, "There's a trap ahead," but it was already too late. A scream burst out from Chae Nayun's mouth. After that, we continued moving forward together. She even asked me why I was dressed so lightly. In weather like this, you'll freeze into a zombie. But how could she know the origin of my clothes? This was a functional coat. It kept me warm in winter and cool in summer, and it also had excellent defense. It was also a gift from Rachel. If I had known there would be someone this caring, I would have created 300 more of them. Just as I was thinking, Chae Nayun let out a lion-like roar. It turned out she had found the first flag. The flag was located high on a steep cliff. Faced with such difficult terrain, I thought only an idiot would climb up there. Yet right before my eyes, such a person appeared. That was her, but I wasn't going to imitate her method. So I pulled out a dagger with an iron chain attached to it. Chae Nayun even looked down on my equipment. What she didn't know was that this weapon could be infused with holy and magical power. I spun around on the spot and hurled the dagger out. It didn't matter where the dagger flew, because I could control the magic power within it. That way, it could accurately strike the flag. With a snap, the flag fell right in front of me. I crouched down to examine the reward on it. It turned out to be just Yoo Yeonha's contact information. Compared to my calm reaction, Chae Nayun burst into laughter again. I directly handed the reward to her. After all, I already had Yoo Yeonha's contact information, but Chae Nayun stubbornly returned it to me. I accepted the reward and followed Chae Nayun back to the starting point. What kind of challenge awaited us next?